Welcome to Fantasy Audiobook, Marvel. I'm Shazam. Chapter 81. After returning to London, Billy asked Samir to clean the flowers and eat them raw. Billy also ate one, and it felt very normal, probably because of the blood orchid or the age-old spring water. The body has already developed resistance to it. However, Steve, Samir, and Charlie felt a magical power in their bodies, which made them feel more energetic. However, from the appearance point of view, their appearance has not changed in any way. The Higan flower can only increase the lifespan, and cannot make people return to youth, nor will they have strong power. Billy then used Shazam's power to seal the mysterious power in their eyes. To be familiar and easy to understand, Steve and others already have the legendary yin-yang eyes under the influence of Bai and Hua. However, for ordinary people, this yin and yang eye, 600, is not a good thing. On the contrary, it will attract the attention of some evil spirits, and will be confused if not scared to death. Fortunately, Steve and others met Billy, otherwise, take Diana as an example, their Amazon female warriors would not have the ability to seal the power of hell. Billy deliberately left some other shore flowers and gave them to Diana for safekeeping. They were prepared to be reserved for future relatives, and they could be secretly put in the meals, so that they could increase their life expectancy without knowing it. The storage time of Higan flower is very long. Even if it dries up, it still has a certain effect, so Billy is not worried. At most, it will lose some nutrients after decades. After Steve, Charlie, and Samir expressed their gratitude and enthusiasm, Billy directly drove the three shameless old guys out. Boom. Billy closed the door and looked at Diana with a smile. "My dear, it's still early, and it's not dark yet. Let's relax for a while." After speaking, without waiting for Diana's answer, Billy directly held Diana upstairs, and it was a bright spring again. Tønsberg, Norway, 1939. A small town in the southeast is the oldest town in Norway and one of the birthplaces of Norse mythology. A certain Catholic church. Billy sneaked into it in the dark. Prior to this, Billy had observed that there were only two people in this church, one is a priest and one is a little priest, and they are all asleep now. Billy came to the storage room behind the church, opened the hidden underground passage, and walked in. At the end of the underground passage is a secret room. In other words, it is a secret room like a mausoleum. There is a sarcophagus in the center of the secret room, and on the surrounding stone walls are murals, which probably tell the story of Odin beheading evil beasts. Wow! In a harsh sound, Billy pushed open the lid of the sarcophagus and looked inside the sarcophagus. I saw a bone warrior wearing silver armor, holding a sharp sword, and placing a light blue cube crystal on his chest. Sure enough, it is exactly the same as the content in the film, Captain of the United States, the Avengers Pioneer. This is a fake tesseract. Billy whispered softly, and then closed the sarcophagus again. Yes, the purpose of Billy's trip is tesseract. In other words, the space stone. According to the original plot, Red Skull, the head of Hydra, will come here to take away Tesseract in 1942, which is 3 years later. However, Billy is ready to come first. However, after using up, Billy will still replace the weakened version of Tesseract here, and will never let Red Skull go for nothing. As for whether Red Skull can use the power of Tesseract to develop those powerful weapons, it is his own business and has nothing to do with Billy. Billy felt that he was so kind. He never ate alone, and knew that he would leave a little for the people behind. It was great. Afterwards, Billy searched on the surrounding stone walls again. It didn't take long before he found the mechanism on a snake head and pressed his eyes. Wow! A square was pushed out, and what was stored in it was naturally Billy's tesseract, bursting with brilliant blue light. Billy took out the tesseract, pushed it back on the stone box, and then opened a cross-space portal, stepped in, and instantly arrived on Devil Island. Yes, Billy is ready to absorb the power in Tesseract on Devil Island. Don't say that Devil Island is dangerous. In the eyes of Devil Island's most evil monsters, Billy is the most dangerous existence, and ghosts will go to die. In addition, there is another benefit of absorbing the power in Tesseract on Devil Island. This place is isolated from the world, and there are thunderclouds and storms guarding the outside. No matter how big a disturbance is, no one knows. Billy sat cross-legged in the valley where the blood orchids once bloomed. The surroundings were silent. Not far away, the big anaconda in the cave looked at Billy from a distance, and immediately retracted to sleep. Recalling the method recorded on the gold hanging paper, Billy's hands were sealed, and the super ancient golden magic spells were imprinted into Tesseract. A bright blue light burst out from within Tesseract, illuminating the entire valley full of dense fog, and bursting out extremely terrifying spatial power. Boom! The mighty power swept in all directions, and the creatures on the entire Devil Island were all shocked, and all of them jumped to the ground in fright, trembling all over. Whether it's the big anaconda, the King Kong, or the skeleton lizard farther away, no one dared to come out and scream, and was already frightened by unprecedented fear. Tesseract floated slowly, hovering in front of Billy. A powerful force of space began to rush into Billy's right hand like a rushing tide. This time, as his own strength has grown considerably, the power of space that Billy can absorb is far greater than the power of time before, and the absorption speed is also much faster. Not long after, Billy's absorption of the power of space also fell into a predicament, but the power of space in Tesseract was still flooding in crazily. Billy didn't panic. He was so-called one rebirth and second rebirth. For this kind of situation, he had already anticipated it, and he was ready to welcome it. Don't panic, continue to seal with both hands, and walk away with the infinite seal technique. After this period of experience, Billy's knowledge of the infinite seal technique has reached a new height. This is a sealing technique specifically used to seal the vast power of infinite gems, but it is not just a simple sealing technique, but can also help integrate the power of infinite gems. The only flaw is that some seal power may be out of control, but it didn't cause any trouble to Billy. Instead, it got a lot of benefits. Seal up. A complicated and cumbersome golden magic circle slowly landed on Billy's right arm. Suddenly, the bright blue space light on the right arm converged and returned to normal. However, if you look closely, you can vaguely see that under the skin of Billy's right arm, there are blue spatial forces surging from time to time. From then on, Billy's right arm was no longer an ordinary arm, just like his magic pupil of time, possessing incredible ability and controlling the power of space. The space magic arm was born. At the moment, the light of Tesseract all converged, and slowly fell into Billy's hands, but its file size, after Billy's crazy absorption, has become basically not worth mentioning. This is still the result of Billy's control. If Billy sucks, he can completely seal Tesseract, which is one of the 6 infinite gems, the space gem, and all the power in it is sealed in his right arm, a little bit not left. However, Billy feels that you must be kind. Especially as a traverser with gold finger, he has already occupied the right time, place and people, so don't arbitrarily destroy the future plot trend and cause a lot of unpredictable butterfly effects. You know, this kind of method is pure and not much different from death. Once the waves are overwhelmed, they may have to wave themselves in, and then they can only play dick. At this moment, I feel the power of space surging in my right arm. Although I can't control much, I can clearly feel that my attainments in space power have been greatly improved. The most obvious point is that he can now use the spell of mirror space. In the mirror space, Billy is the master of the space and can control the entire space at will. At this moment, Billy doesn't need to envy Caecilius anymore. It won't be long before he can completely step on him. Billy calmed down his excitement, glanced at Tesseract in his hand, and a sly smile evoked at the corner of his mouth, preparing to leave a gift for the future Hydra boss Red Skull. With a movement of mind, under the control of Billy, the power of the space in the weakened space gem was mobilized, and then a blue cube was rebuilt, instead of just a stone as big as a small half-thumb. Billy carefully looked at the brand new Tesseract in his hands. From the appearance, it was exactly the same as the original. Unless it was tested by a big boss personally, no one knew that a huge change had taken place inside. Hey, Billy smiled triumphantly, and then his mind moved, and a circle of electric sparks appeared in front of Billy. Now, after the space power has been greatly improved, Billy uses the cross-space portal again, and he doesn't even need to wave his hand, just move his mind to get it done. Stepping into the portal, Billy once again came to the secret room in the small town of Norway, and put the inferior Tesseract in his hand back to its original position. In fact, after 3 years, Red Skull should thank Billy for his deeds. Without Billy's help, the power of Tesseract would be greatly weakened, the power of which can actually be used by a mere mortal, let alone used to develop weapons. You know, in the movie, Guardians of Galaxy, it is clearly pointed out how terrifying the power of infinite gems is. Definitely, Billy wouldn't know that if it weren't for his actions. In the future New York war, the space gate opened by Loki would not be so small, and at most it would be able to pass a Zetaru mothership. Anyone who has a bit of a brain will think this is abnormal. That is the space gem, one of the 6 infinite gems, with infinite space power. How could the opening of the space door be so small? This is obviously unreasonable. Even without this space gem, letting Sorcerer Supreme Ancient One open a door to space is probably much stronger. This is completely hitting the face of infinite gems. So, in the future, thousands of New Yorkers should thank Billy for everything he has done for them today. It's just that what Billy wants to see most is Thanos' face after snapping his fingers. It must be very exciting. Thinking about it, people can't help but laugh. After placing the Tesseract, Billy moved his mind, opened an electric spark circle again, and returned to the Crafts Collection Hall in London, where he and Diana's cozy nest. At the moment, Diana was wearing loose casual clothes and was drawing with a paintbrush. No way, it's really idle. She can only pass the time like this. When Billy is not by her side, she basically spends the time like this. Are you done? Diana looked at Billy and asked. Billy nodded, feeling a little excited, and his body was a little uncontrollable, especially after seeing Diana's hot body. He decided to hold a meeting for a little while. Thinking of this, Billy directly turned into an afterimage and came to Diana's side, then picked Diana in his arms and walked to the second-floor bedroom with a smile on his face. In September, World War II broke out, and Billy, who had been with Diana for half a year, finally returned to the future. The first thing Billy did after returning to the future was to go to London, the country of Ying. Handicraft Collection Hall. Diana looked at Billionaire very sadly. Half a century has passed. Sorry, I don't want to be like this either, it's not something I can control. Billy looked at Diana's appearance and felt a guilty moment. Diana said with red eyes, "You have to make up for me." Next, Billy and Diana began to kill the quartet again, fighting fiercely for a whole week. Lying on the bed, Billy's gaze accidentally saw the set of Harry Potter placed on the bedside. He couldn't help but coughed, and then asked Diana, "You also like to read novels? Is this novel good looking?" Quote. Diana said casually, "I was bored to pass the time, but the magical world of Ying Country was miserable. Because of this book, I had to change the location of Diagon Alley Railway Station. The old antiques of the Magic Association are even more furious because of this. They can't wait to take the author of this book alive. Fortunately, the author is an ordinary person. There are regulations in the transcendental world. Otherwise, this author would be miserable, but it is really strange that an ordinary person knows such a secret thing." Billy stroked his chin in surprise. "The horse seller, is there any mistake? The magical world actually exists. Fortunately, the real name is useless. Special code. The content in this novel, shouldn't it become true?" At this moment, Billy felt a little pity in his heart. "Do you dare to believe it? Of the Virgin Mary. That's it, this is the world of beautiful comics, you got a mess of wool in Harry Potter. Mamma mia, the guys from the Ying National Devil Magician Association shouldn't be so dishonest to the United States and ask me for trouble. It must be very easy for these guys to find the information of the author of Harry Potter, then my deity will be exposed." A stern look flashed in Billy's eyes. These guys had better be honest, and had better not trouble their loved ones during the time they were away. Otherwise, Lao Tzu will definitely overturn the entire Ying Country magic world. No, I'd better go back and take a look. After leaving for so long, at least it's time to go back and report safety. In fact, it didn't take long to leave, it was only 10 days, but there was a meeting with Diana for 1 week. After talking to Diana, Billy moved directly back to the United States, New York, and restored Billy's appearance. "I'm back." Billy opened the door of the orphanage, without any guilty conscience of doing bad things, and walked in swaggeringly. "Your kid finally came back, where did you go during this time?" Victor, with a beard-faced face, looked at Billy angrily and accused him. Although his tone was rather stern, he was full of concern. Rosa on the side was obviously relieved. The anxious and worried expression on her face suddenly became much less, and she walked over and hugged Billy and said, "It's good to come back, and it's good to come back." At this time, a burly man in a police uniform stood up from the sofa. Since Billy has returned, then I am leaving. Victor also stood up immediately and thanked. Sergeant George, this is really troublesome for you this time. Stay and have a meal together, let us thank you very much. Sheriff George waved his hand. No, my family is also waiting for me to go back, I won't disturb you. Afterwards, Chief George walked to Billy's side and touched Billy's head. Your kid is getting better and better. This time, even the camera of my police station can't find you. Let's talk about it. Over the years, things like running away from home, deceiving police officers, and privately using the police's internal systems have not been done less. They are all this big, and they should be more sensible. Billy glanced at Inspector George and touched my head. If it weren't for your care of Billy in the past, at least one of your arms would have to be taken off. After Chief George left, the little black girl Dalla rushed over and hugged Billy. Brother, you are finally back, I think about you. Billy felt quite moved. This is a big warm family. He touched the little black girl's long hair. I miss you too much. Have you been well behaved lately? Everything is normal at home. Dara replied. I'm very good. Everyone misses you very much. Recently, nothing happened at home. However, we have another superhero in New York. We call him Spider-Man. Huh, Spider-Man. Billy couldn't help being a little confused again. Didn't he just run to the past time and space for a while? How could the plot suddenly enter the Spider-Man stage? It was too fast. At this time, Eugene, who was playing a game on the sofa, added, and that famous dandy Tony Big Shit has also disappeared. It is said that he was caught by terrorists in Afghanistan. You can take a look. Billy walked over and picked up the Daily Horn on the table. The front page of The Lizard Man had a trouble on the Brooklyn Bridge, Spider-Man. Looking at the Spider-Man photos in the Clarion Daily, Billy didn't have to think about it. It must be the high school student who used to make living expenses or pocket money. The time of the incident, well, it was last night. Billy continued to look down, and news about Tony's shit came out. However, this incident broke out a week ago and is no longer news. To be honest, Billy really doesn't like Spider-Man. Because of the death of his uncle, this guy relied on the super ability he got and began to retaliate wildly against the black forces, causing serious adverse effects on the society and the police. Don't think that Spider-Man is a hero, he is not worthy, he is a ventor, a stupid revenge. Don't even think how innocent he is on the wanted warrant of the police station. If he did not disrupt the police's undercover activities, did not disrupt the police's 3-month car theft team plan, etc., how could he be on the wanted warrant? In this matter, let alone the series of damages he caused to New York transportation, shops, private cars, public facilities, etc., the undercover police officer he killed is not something he can afford. It is simply a pit. Dead father, dead mother, dead uncle, dead girlfriend. Maggie. Even if the market value of Peter's future company surpasses that of Stark Industries, it's a matter of Billy. At this moment, Billy couldn't help but think of Sheriff George who had just left. By the way, in a sense, he and Sheriff George are already old acquaintances. Because Billy had a mental axis in the past and wanted to find his biological mother, he never wanted to stay in the family that adopted him. As a result, it caused a lot of trouble and was forced to switch to many adoptive families. Until now, no family is willing to adopt Billy. Fortunately, he was adopted by the current orphanage. During those years, Billy became a frequent visitor to the police station and met Chief George. Sheriff George has a daughter and 2 sons who are about the same age as Billy, so his father's love is rampant and he feels very sorry for Billy and takes good care of Billy. Thinking of George's next end, Billy couldn't help but frown, and his favorability for Peter plummeted. Sheriff George used his life to make Peter promise not to provoke his king's daughter, but it turned out. It's so special to get up and directly reunite George and his daughter. It can be said that Peter single-handedly caused the tragedy of Sheriff George's family destruction. Peter is sad, and George's family, leaving George's wife to raise 2 children. Even if there is a pension, in a big city like New York, what is it to support the 2 children without fathers to finish high school? Special code. This is the real world, and people need money to live. After the death of Uncle May, in order to feed Billy, Aunt May had to work twice a day at that age. So, when people love roar for superhero, they didn't see the actual plot behind it. To put it bluntly, the very reason why this Earth is about to enter the era of chaos is the existence of these self-proclaimed and righteous duty police. The dark world of New York said it was big or small. After the chaotic period of the 1990s, the scope of darkness has basically been fixed now. The law enforcement agency is clear about which area is and which dark force is in charge. If there is a problem, just follow the list and ask the crime at the door. However, being so disturbed by some self-righteous duty police, the dark side became unstable, and the originally balanced situation began to collapse. In this way, gang vendettas and turf grabbing will begin again. The dark side is unstable. Once dark cases are involved, the efficiency of law enforcement agencies will also be greatly reduced. One come and two goes, this is the so-called vicious circle. Volunteer police began to become superhero, and law enforcement agencies began to fall into soy sauce. When something goes wrong, the first thing people think of is not the police, but all kinds of voluntary police. So, the introduction of the superhero registration bill in the future is not without reason. At this time, Rose's voice suddenly came over, "Children, go and wash your hands, you can prepare to eat." Hearing this, Billy immediately thought of another thing, walked straight to the kitchen, and said with a smile on his face, "Mother Rosa, Daddy Victor, I'll help you." Afterwards, regardless of Rose's refusal, she directly helped. In fact, Billy turned around and secretly took out a bag of powder and sprinkled it on the food. These powders are ground by dehydrated and dried bianwa, which can prolong the life of a person to a certain extent. After dinner, everyone felt very happy to eat, and the body was full of vitality. They didn't know that this was Billy's hands and feet secretly. Definitely, side effects are non-existent, and Billy will never let them be left behind. After everyone fell asleep, Billy's mind moved and once again came to Devil Island, the place where blood orchids grow, through cross-space teleportation. Suddenly, bang bang bang, Billy came to a Devil Island, and the sound of violent gunfire reached his ears. Looking through the sound, I saw that a few meters away, countless special armor-piercing bullets hit the body of the anaconda densely, and the anaconda was covered with blood. There was another explosion, and a steel-bursting arrow plunged into the anaconda's neck like lightning, and directly exploded the entire CFAJ head of the anaconda. Boom! The big anaconda smashed its huge amounts of body heavily on the ground, but it was constantly twisting, and the broken body was recovering at a speed visible to the naked eye. Suddenly, at this time, another series of anesthetic bombs rushed out, shrouded in a head toward the anaconda, making the anaconda gradually calm down, but it could not stop the recovery of the anaconda. Smell. The sound of the bullets being loaded sounded one after another, and the muzzles of the black holes were aimed at Billy one after another. "Stop. Put down all the weapons for me." With a violent shout, Nick the Cyclops ran out. "No way, you can't come out. If you provoke the opponent, it will really be over, even S.H.I.E.L.D. can't keep it." Nick glared at Hawkeye Barton severely. "Didn't you hear? I told you to put down the weapon, but I didn't immediately put it down. This is our guest of S.H.I.E.L.D. Hawkeye had a puzzled look. Although he obediently put down his weapon, he always maintained a high degree of vigilance. The same goes for Black Widow Natasha Romanoff on the side. People who suddenly appear are very dangerous. Nick walked up to Billy and said respectfully, "Mr. Billy, it's been a long time since I saw you. I don't know why you are here." Billy looked at Nick with a faint smile. "Why am I here? Don't you know? Was the blood orchid still enough?" While speaking, Billy also glanced at the place where the blood orchid grew from the corner of his eye. "There is only one. It seems that the reception of the spring water for the age is a bit cruel back then. It seems that S.H.I.E.L.D. is doomed to return this time. However, decades later, the combat effectiveness of S.H.I.E.L.D. has improved greatly, at least it can deal with the big anaconda, but it was almost wiped out that year." Nick's mouth twitched. There were a lot of their super fighter serums, but unfortunately, they were all ruined by HYDRA's undercover agent, leaving only a single seedling of beauty, at least still sleeping. Everything was said by the other party. At the most exciting moment, they were caught off guard by the enemy. They were too careless. Next, we encountered an unprecedented challenge. The challenge from Hydra. Even if we paid huge amounts of money, we were still defeated. If it were not for the addition of Captain America Steve, the Strategic Science Corps was likely to be completely destroyed, and there would be no shield. In fact, from the moment Nick saw Billy appear, he already knew that Blood Orchid was going to be useless again. If you want to snatch it with this great god, it is no different from looking for death. Billy continued. This year the harvest of blood orchids is not good. There is only one. I just want to use it again. So, send a soldier to help me come up. Nick's face suddenly became darker, and his heart was 10,000 unwilling. But what can be done? Nick obediently did it. At this moment, his heart was bleeding. Since he became the chief, he has never suffered such a big loss. Billy took the blood orchid handed over by the soldier and nodded in satisfaction. I have told you a long time ago that this kind of thing will only bring disasters to you, a constant source of disasters. Don't think that I don't know that in the R&D projects of the Osborn Group and the military, you do not have your shield. If you continue, it will surely cause even greater disasters. Nick's heart sank. Even if he is willing to believe what Billy said, he will definitely not let certain projects stop there. SHIELD needs a super soldier. Facing the temptation of power, how could fragile human nature be able to resist it? At least, Nick can't do it. Instead, he calls it for the sake of maintaining world peace. At this moment, the accident happened suddenly. Taste. A sharp whistling sound suddenly sounded. A sharp look flashed in Hawkeye's eyes, and he opened his bow and arrow like lightning and launched an attack on Billy. Billy's gaze flicked, his face suddenly cold, his mind moved, he directly controlled the surrounding space, and used the power of the space to explode the blasted steel arrow into scum. Then, Billy's cold eyes looked at Hawkeye, who was blasted 10 meters away by himself, hit the boulder hard, and vomited blood. If you want to die, I don't mind giving you a ride. Hawkeye stared at Billy blankly, filled with horror. He hadn't seen how the other party made the move, he only felt a huge force coming, and then he was smashed and flew out. Nick and Black Widow looked at Billy in shock. It was terrible, and the strength was unfathomable. Hawkeye didn't even have the ability to resist. Whether it is Nick or Black Widow, it is very clear that Hawkeye's strength is one of the best among SHIELD's elite squad, but now it is so unclearly defeated. Do you dare to believe it? At this moment, Nick's fear of Billy became more profound and intuitive. He recognized a reality even more. No one under his team could deal with the opponent. Black Widow also included Billy as an unprovoked object. Her strength and Hawkeye are on the same level. Billy is also abused. Billy looked at Nick and said faintly, Nick, you said, if I kill you all here, what can anyone do to me? Nick lowered his braised egg head helplessly. I'm very sorry, Mr. Billy, it's my negligence. I can't help but punish him severely when I go back. The situation is better than others, even Nick, who is a seat of S.H.I.E.L.D., has to bow his head. For Nick, this day is definitely the most humiliating day in his life. It is really tragic. Ah, Billy smiled coldly, not taking Nick's words seriously. Still punished. Go to hell. However, seeing Nick's pain again makes me feel very happy. With a thought, he opened a cross-space portal and left Devil Island directly. After returning home, Billy collected the hard-earned blood orchid, booked a hotel, sent a message to a certain lady, and went to bed happily. Devil Island. Black Widow looked at Nick in disbelief and asked, Chief, did you just let him go? Did you give up the only blood orchid? In Black Widow's eyes, Nick had never done such a stubborn thing. When he didn't kill the quartet, everything was under control. But today, he lost the soldier and lost his wife. That's the blood orchid they most urgently need right now. Dr. Erskine's Super Warrior Serum formula has always been in their hands, but the blood orchid is missing. According to their scientific researchers, the reason why the military and Osborn's experiments have not had a key breakthrough, it is very likely that the problem lies in this blood orchid. Now the situation is turbulent, and various dark forces have never been able to come out. The trump card of S.H.I.E.L.D. is sleeping again, and they continue to add new and powerful combat power to stabilize the situation. Hawkeye, who got up from the ground and wiped off the bruises on his mouth, looked at the black marinated egg incomprehensibly. Although Phil Coulson and Hill next to him did not speak, they looked at the black marinated egg incomprehensibly. In their impression, even if someone robbed them of their things, none of the final endings were constantly being sent by their chief to make them a part of history. Nick sighed deeply in his heart. What else can he do if he is not convinced? Since the 7 deadly sins incident, Nick has been eyeing Billy and secretly suppressed the impact of this incident. He once asked about the extraordinary troupe in his hand, but when those people heard that Billy came from the Temple of Eternal Rock, they immediately recognized them all. You know, this includes the witches of Ruiying, the vampires and werewolves of Europe, and so on. If this secret team was recruited by Nick himself, he might still follow his orders to perform the task against Billy. However, the existence of this secret team is all due to the contributions of several founding veterans of S.H.I.E.L.D. He has nothing to do with Nick. The witches who were proficient in black magic were recruited by Dr. Pym, and the vampires and werewolves were recruited by the favor of Howard, who was so romantic with his son at the time. In a word, this secret squad belongs to the kind that does not listen to the announcement. As for why these people are still staying in S.H.I.E.L.D., one is that S.H.I.E.L.D. is treated very well, and the other is that everyone has their own careful thoughts. What's more cheating is that after Nick mentioned Billy to them, the members of the extraordinary team also gave him a serious warning. They told Nick very clearly that if Nick dared to provoke the other party, they would definitely tie Nick to the other party and beat him severely, and then let the other party deal with it. The members of this extraordinary team are very clear. Although they are all in the extraordinary world and possess powerful power that ordinary people do not have, there is also a difference in strength in the extraordinary world. The Temple of Eternal Rock, that is a proper gangster level. Although the number is small, no one dares to provoke it. If you think about it with your toes, you will know that the forces that shoulder the heavy responsibility of sealing the 7 deadly sins of hell are easy to provoke. At least, if this group of people is handed over to their extraordinary squad, let alone sealed, whether they can live well is a question. So, how can you afford it? From then on, Nick knew one thing clearly. He couldn't even provoke the extraordinary squad, let alone Billy. It was a great deal. He also understood, back then, why Mr. Howard would be so polite to Billy. Obviously Mr. Howard had known all this a long time ago. The next day, Billy had breakfast, changed makeup, and happily went out on a date with Miss Mary. The two hadn't seen each other for a long time. When they met, it was naturally that Ganchai met fire, and the street became hot. Billy took Mary to go shopping first, then had lunch, and then went to the hotel booked by sight. After arriving at the hotel, Mary's mood became extremely forgotten, and she could not help but imagine what would happen in the room next. Mary's heart was extremely nervous. To be honest, she didn't fully prepare her heart. This incident happened too suddenly. But she doesn't know how to tell Billy. What if he gets angry? Ding! Billy took Mary out of the elevator. At this time, Billy finally realized that something was wrong with Mary, and immediately reacted, knowing that Mary must have been thinking about it. Hey, what are you thinking? I just want to give you a gift. Don't think about it. Definitely, if you are ready to want something to happen to me, I won't refuse. Billy a little bit said improperly. What? After Mary heard Billy's explanation, a pretty face immediately turned red, raised her small fist and punched Billy's chest. I hate it. Billy looked at Mary with a smile on his face. Don't tell me. Mary's blushing look is so cute that people can't help but move their index fingers, which is very attractive. Niuji. Billy locked the door, closed all the curtains, and inspected the entire room, and finally determined one thing: it was very safe, and there was no hidden camera. However, Mary on the side looked a little nervous, thinking that Billy was probably not just about giving her a gift, and couldn't help thinking about it again. To be honest, this matter really made Mary, a good girl, a little tangled and nervous, but there was actually some expectation deep in her heart, but Mary was more reserved. Billy came to Mary's side. Mary was still blushing, and she didn't dare to look at Billy. She lowered her head and played with her fingers, not knowing what she was thinking. At this time, Billy took out a bright red flower, exuding an elegant fragrance, but it was very attractive, and it would make people, 60, involuntarily intoxicated. Mary's eyes were instantly attracted, as if it were a magical flower. Billy handed the blood orchid in his hand to Mary. Eat this flower, it can keep you young forever. What, have you eaten? Mary couldn't help being stunned when she heard the words. Such a beautiful flower was about to be eaten by her. Etc. Eternal youth. Mary's eyes lit up in an instant, and she asked in disbelief, you mean, you can stay young forever by eating this flower? Really? Billy smiled and said, "Definitely is true, how could I lie to you?" Mary's face suddenly showed a look of surprise. For a woman, the temptation of eternal youth is so great that no woman can resist it. If someone else said this, Mary would not believe it 100%, but Billy said this from the mouth of Billy, who is Billy, superhero. In Mary's perception, superhero is entirely possible to possess such a magical treasure, and only superhero can possess such a treasure. Mary was extremely excited. She took the blood orchid in Billy's hand with her hands trembling slightly, slowly stuffed it into her mouth, chewed it slowly, and ate it. Only a layer of black oil on Mary's exposed skin began to come out, but within a few seconds, Mary's face was covered with a layer of dirt. Mary asked in surprise, "What is this?" Billy replied, "Detox, just wash it later, don't worry." Regarding this matter, it was naturally the old Shazam who told Billy. As for why Billy didn't have this phenomenon when he took the blood orchid, definitely because Billy doesn't need to detox. In addition, after getting this blood orchid, Billy has already checked it. Although this blood orchid looks no different from the one it got before, but because the nourishment of the spring water is not enough, it can't let people break through the shackles of life genes and gain power far beyond ordinary people. However, Billy feels that this is not necessarily a bad thing, and it saves Mary from becoming a superhero. In this way, the main function of this blood orchid is only immortality, which can fix Mary's face at this stage. After an entire hour passed, Mary finally walked out of the shower room and stared at herself in the mirror blankly. The smile on her face became brighter and brighter. Billy also stood by and looked at Mary, feeling like she had undergone a microdermabrasion plus whitening treatment. My God, is this real? Is the big beauty in the mirror really me? Mary looked at herself in the mirror excitedly, stroking her cheeks with her hands. The smooth, delicate and moisturizing feeling made her feel unbelievable. After a while, the excited Mary couldn't help but yelled and danced. Result: the bath towel that was accidentally wrapped around the body fell off, revealing a perfect body. At this moment, Billy's eyes lit up for an instant, and he couldn't move away anymore, and his heartbeat speed increased. It was so beautiful, it looked like a work of art. At the same time, something important is happening outside. Roar, roar, roar. In the violent noise of helicopter propellers, Chief George, wearing a bulletproof vest, while directing his hands to enter the school to arrest Spider-Man, he walked towards the helicopter. At the moment, Chief George's mood is not beautiful. First, a few days ago, a guy in a weird uniform appeared from nowhere, and he wandered all over New York to commit crimes. Later, during a family dinner, a strange boy's paper was found in Gwen's room, and he was refuted by the boy's paper at the dining table. What a joke! That Spider-Man was originally a joke, and he also obliged the police to fill their vacancies. If you need volunteer police, what do you want them to do with the New York Police Department? Do they hold tea parties every day? What's even more annoying is that a lizard monster emerged from nowhere. During the arrest, 2 police officers lost their lives. At this moment, he had just had lunch, and he received a call to the police and learned that the Lizard Man and Spider-Man had appeared in the Midtown High School at the same time, and they also fought, causing a burst of destruction. And when he had just arrived here to board the helicopter, he heard his men say that the Lizard Man had escaped and was running around on the street. The direction should be the crowded Times Central Plaza in New York. There is not much to say. The police force must be organized, and at all costs, the 2 Destruction Kings, Lizard Man and Spider-Man, must be hunted down and brought to justice. I just didn't expect. When night fell, the action still didn't end. Under the night, over New York City, the helicopters of countless media companies were already hovering on it. Sudden lizard men make a noise in New York, and the appearance of Spider-Man. This is a major news. For people in the media, they are not afraid of war in the world, they are afraid of a harmonious world. Paul, if I hadn't seen it with my own eyes, I wouldn't have believed it. I'm not sure what it is. A humanoid lizard crawling on the north wall of the Osborne Company building, but it's obviously not a human, and it's very strong. A veteran reporter working for the New York Daily independently controlled an airplane with a live searchlight camera, hovering around the Osborne building, and started his live broadcast. The light brought by the powerful searchlight shines like daylight on a creature that is crawling along the roof. Dr. Connors's disguised lizard man is holding the lizard serum contained in the backpack in his arms while crawling upward. This Dr. Lizard is committed to building a world without discrimination and disease. There are ideas, and actions are even more. The idea of drive. Connors, who turned into a lizard man, is very simple. Since the lizard serum is so good, he shouldn't have it alone, just let everyone become a lizard man together. In this case, he would not be regarded as a monster by others. And he can build a society free of diseases, discrimination, and the weak. A certain hotel. Billy gloomily looked at the helicopter flying by the window. He already knew what was happening outside from the TV. Little Spider-Man was about to work with the lizard man on the roof of the Osborn building. The most important thing is that, if nothing else, the police chief Joe, who had taken care of him, will die, roar, and leave behind the poor widow and orphan. What made Billy more disturbed was that he actually noticed the appearance of hell. If he didn't feel wrong, 9 out of 10 are definitely Hell King Mephisto, that bad old man. Maybe he came to collect the souls who died accidentally in the accident. For Mephisto, or other demons, the soul is their greatest tonic and an extremely important source of power. Due to a certain restriction, they can't really come, and can't exert their original strength. To break through this restriction and exert greater power in the world, there is only one way to swallow the soul. Definitely, Mephisto's appearance may also be for other reasons. For example, trading. You know, in the American comics world, Mephisto, this terrible old man, is famously fond of finding people to make deals. For the reasons for the emergence of Mephisto, Billy is more inclined to the latter. The worst result was that Mephisto made a deal with Dr. Connors. Now that old Shazam is gone, Billy, as the only descendant of the Temple of Eternal Rock, must take the responsibility of preventing the evil forces of hell from disrupting the world. Billy shook his head, said goodbye to Miss Mary, left the hotel, and flew to the headquarters of the Osborn group. Wow, look, it's Spider-Man, Mom. Robin, look, Spider-Man. Really? Wow, it's really Spider-Man. On the street, a little boy raised his head in his mother's arms and pointed at the Spider-Man who was passing by and said happily. At the moment, Spider-Man Peter was like a master of acrobatics, quickly shuttled over the sky of one building after another, and kept getting closer to the Osborn group. Come on, Spider-Man, come on, Spider-Man, come on. Listening to the sounds of cheering for Spider-Man from all around, Chief George's face turned dark. This is why he dislikes voluntary police. Personal consciousness is too strong. This is not good. If things continue like this, their New York Police Department will sooner or later become a soy sauce party or a backup man. The credit is the superhero, and the backing is the law enforcement agency. Fact. Who did their law enforcement agencies provoke? However, for a certain volunteer policeman, he still likes to help them deal with terrible monsters that ordinary people can't deal with. It's definitely not like little Spider-Man, who has been idle all day, knowing the action to come out to destroy them, and only show up when it is really needed. Inspector George felt that this was the real hero, not in the name of justice, venting anger, avenging personal revenge, disrupting social order, and so on. If he could, he really wanted to take that nasty little Spider-Man into jail for a lifetime. Dad, I must give this antidote serum to Spider-Man. Get in the car, let's go. No, this thing can stop the lizardmen. Boarding. ... You do not understand. I understand, your boyfriend has a lot of masks, I already know, give this to me. Inspector George grabbed Gwen, who had just rushed out of the Osborn building, and grabbed the antidote serum from Gwen's hand. He raised his head and glanced at the lizard man who had begun to attack the horn towards the top floor. Please make sure he is okay. Gwen looked at his father after being held by a police officer. Sergeant George glanced at Gwen, and felt that his daughter could not keep it when he grew up. He had worked so hard to raise Chinese cabbage for 18 years, and he was about to be taken over by an idiot. At this moment, there were 10,000 grass and mud horses running wild in Chief George's heart. Had it not been for the daughter to be on the sidelines, Sheriff George would have already screamed for horse selling. Suddenly, a big hand fell from the sky and directly snatched the antidote serum from Inspector George's hand. Sheriff George stared at superhero Billy, who didn't know when he appeared next to him for a moment. Optimistic about your daughter, you ordinary people should not interfere in this matter. Billy shook his head and looked up at the towering Osborn Magnanimous, and the Spider-Man Peter, who descended directly from the sky to the outer glass of Osborn and began to climb towards it. To be honest, Billy really doesn't want to get involved in this matter. A lizard man, at best, is just a dead end. Had it not been for Sheriff George's taking care of him, coupled with the appearance of the nasty old man Mephisto, ghosts would like to be nosy. After moving his limbs and sorting out his hairstyle, Billy's mouth pulled out a curve. Be handsome in appearance and not messy hairstyle. Billy's legs bent slightly. Subsequently, seeing Billy soaring into the sky, the police officers on the scene, one of them counted as one, was completely stunned. With his hands behind his back, Billy was like a rocket soaring into the sky, but in the blink of an eye he appeared next to Spider-Man, who was crawling on his limbs against the wall. Little Spider-Man heard the roar of the wind next to him. At first he didn't have any doubts, but in the next second, when he saw the stalwart figure rushing into the sky, he immediately fell into envy. For this figure, little Spider-Man Peter is naturally very familiar. Especially in the previous battle with the 7 deadly sins in Times Square, New York, he didn't know how many times he watched it. It was so handsome and cool. Peter very much hopes that he can become such a powerful superhero. If Billy knew what little Spider-Man Peter was thinking, he would definitely chuckle, then pat Peter on the shoulder, and seriously warned, "Sound Yen, study hard, stop daydreaming, this is unrealistic. You don't have that much potential." Sheriff George, with a dark face, said to Gwen, "Didn't I let you go home? Why are you here?" Gwen opened his mouth, just about to say that there is no time. But he raised his head and glanced at Billy, who had rushed into the clouds, and the boyfriend who was trying to crawl upwards. Finally, Gwen lowered his head and said falteringly, "I'm sorry, Dad." Inspector George glanced at Gwen, who was now a good girl again, and he was very embarrassed. "My daughter has been very sensible since she was a child. Since she went to school, she has never had a scholarship less than once every year. Even this year, I had already graduated from the graduating class of the Municipal Academy of Sciences, and successfully joined the Osborn Group, and entered the field of scientific research in biology one step in advance." There is no doubt that Chief George has high expectations of Gwen. But what about now? I thought Gwen was a sensible girl since she was a child, who knew she would be overwhelmed by a special wild boar if she didn't pay attention. Moreover, this wild boar played a special role as a Spider-Man before this, destroying his 2 undercover operations. If so, as long as the daughter likes it, Sheriff George Shinobu will pass. But now, my daughter's even ignored her own safety, and came to take part in this kind of thing. This kind of thing is something she can participate in as an ordinary little girl, and even he can guarantee to retreat without seeing him. Inspector George took a deep breath, looked at Gwen and said in a deep voice, "Little girl, you will be confined for a full month from today." Gwen raised his head and opened his mouth, looking at his father in disbelief. You know, the word forbidden has never appeared in her. It has always been the exclusive of her 2 younger brothers. I'm not the one who is sick, they are. There will be no more discrimination, no loneliness, or abandonment in this world, as long as the serum I invented is used. Lizard serum can promote the evolution of humans. Humans need to adapt to evolve. What can be done with a little appearance change? This is the pain of evolution. Like a snake with metamorphosis, you can gain freedom. I want to create a great human being, but there is no such person. Human beings are cowardly, pathetic, and low-energy creatures. Since they can be so powerful, why bother to be humans? Faster, stronger, smarter, this is my gift to you. As long as you abandon this skin that restricts me, I will have more powerful power, the power to change the world. Dr. Connors was struggling to move towards the top-floor launcher, and now he was already fascinated by the sudden power, fascinated by his mind. To a certain extent, every great scientist is a paranoid, stubbornly thinking that his new invention is great and beneficial to mankind, regardless of how others look at it. Above the roof, countdown to launch, 2 minutes. Dr. Lizardman Connors stepped on a pair of snake eyes and kissed a very happy smile with his wide lips. Soon, the whole New York will be filled with lizard people like him. There will be no disease, no pain, no weak people. What a beautiful world. His ultimate ideal will soon be realized. Dr. Connors heard the movement behind him, his snake eyes jumped, and the giant's tail instantly resembled a steel iron bone. Without looking at it, it swept toward the back, as if the autumn wind swept fallen leaves. Open corner bracket shoe. What? Roar. Dr. Connors was in pain, turned around and looked at the tail that fell to the ground. The fractured part of the tail was regrowing at a speed visible to the naked eye. It's just that on the docked tail, the green liquid kept dripping on the ground, and there was a corroding sound. Looking at Billy, who suddenly appeared in front of him, Dr. Connors couldn't help but shrink his snake eyes, and asked hoarsely, "Who are you?" Temple of Eternal Rock. Dr. Connors, you have been arrested for the crime. Billy was taken aback for a moment, then shrugged, and said indifferently, "Follow it, you won't survive the day of court anyway." Roar. Dr. Connors was taken aback for a moment, and then he laughed and showed his sharp claws directly, and then a hungry tiger rushed towards Billy, who was standing on the edge of the roof of the building. The sharp claws glowed green under the moonlight, which is not the color that a positive person would have at first glance. Ah, dwang. Billy looked at Dr. Connors, who was kicked directly on the water tower and printed a trace, smiled disdainfully, and then walked towards the device that was about to be launched in a minute as if shopping. Where's the courage? This Dr. Connors must have been playing too much lizard hormone. Also created a world without the weak. I'm scared. Any mutant who can set fire or freeze ice can hang him up and hit him. After the transformation, Dr. Connors, in addition to no disability, faster speed, greater strength, and the ability of broken limb reborn, what about other things? Will it fly? Will it set on fire? Or will it change color? None of them. In the end, Dr. Connors, who has transformed into a lizard, is still within the scope of the five scums in the fundamental sense. As long as Billy doesn't want him to get close, he will never get close to Billy's body. If he can get close, even Billy brags. Before coming to the device, Billy directly turned on the device launcher, ready to take out the lizard serum inside. Feeling the gust of wind roaring behind him, Billy smiled coldly, without turning his head back. With a movement of his mind, a cluster of golden thunder suddenly burst into his palm. Meow. A golden stream of light flashed, and there was a sudden bang, and Dr. Lizardman Connors was directly blown to pieces. Billy took off the lizard Good King serum, bumped it in his hand, and threw it directly behind. The little Spider-Man who had just climbed up hurriedly caught the lizard serum that drew an arc in the air, still in the shock of the previous scene. It was too powerful. With a wave of his hand, it bombarded the mighty lizardman. But at this moment, an accident happened. A cloud of gray energy suddenly enveloped the wreckage of Dr. Connors, and a strong smell of hell burst out. Billy watched this scene coldly. Mephisto, you lousy old man, this is going to be against me, right? Obviously, in the previous journey through time and space, Mephisto must have hated Billy because of the things in the tomb. By the way, if it weren't for Billy, Mephisto could not get his plague beads back at all. Billy glanced at little Spider-Man Peter lightly. If you don't want to die, stay away. Little Spider-Man Peter was shocked, pointed at himself, looked at Billy and said, "Are you talking to me?" "Oh, it seems that there is no one else but me," Peter said to himself, and then hid away from a distance. To be honest, little Spider-Man is still somewhat unconvinced in his heart, and wants to prove himself in front of Billy. Billy's words are very clear. The subtext is that your strength is not good, and the battle that is about to start is not something a scum of your level can participate in. Although little Spider-Man is very reluctant to admit that he is a scumbag, but he can't even deal with the lizardmen before, let alone don't know what happened now. I saw that Dr. Connors, who had been dismembered, stood up again, his body quickly healed and became taller. Not only that, but dark green scales began to emerge on the green skin, glowing with a metallic luster in the moonlight, and it seemed that it should be quite firm. In a blink of an eye, the body of Dr. Connors, who was transformed into a lizard monster, had grown to a height of 5 meters, covered with dark green hard scales, with sharper fangs and sharper claws. And that long tail that drags on the ground as a veritable steel whip. However, this is not over yet. The stubby but sharp barbs popped out from under the scales like bamboo shoots after a rain, and they were still shining with green cold light in the moonlight. You don't need to guess, it's very toxic, and whoever touches is unlucky. Roar. Dr. Connors, who was transformed into a lizard monster, yelled at Billy again and again. His voice was full of excitement, which came from the joy of power improvement. Billy coldly looked at Dr. Connors, who had become even more terrifying. Although the aura exuding from his body was a lot stronger, he still didn't take it seriously. Is it possible that it can be more than the 7 deadly sins? Mephisto, don't let me find a chance, or I will kill you once if you encounter it. Bad old man, really bad. However, Billy is not afraid of Dr. Connors after being strengthened by the hell powers, and it does not mean that the little Spider-Man in the distance is not afraid, and his heartbeat speeds up with fright. At this moment, even if Billy lets little Spider-Man join the battle, little Spider-Man definitely doesn't want to get involved. The overwhelming sense of justice does not mean you don't want to kill yourself. You know, Peter's spider telepathy is very sensitive to danger. At the moment, unprecedented alarms had already been madly transmitted to his central nervous system. If it weren't for Billy's presence, little Spider-Man would definitely run as far as possible. Boom! Dr. Connors bent his legs and suddenly exerted force, turning into a cannonball, and once again rushed towards Billy like a hungry tiger. Billy snorted disdainfully. In his eyes, Dr. Connors was at best a weak version of Godzilla, not worth mentioning. Suddenly, a blue light appeared in Billy's right hand. It was the bright light of space. Dr. Connors suddenly felt a terrifying force surge from all directions, squeezing his body frantically. At this moment, Dr. Connors' body was imprisoned in the air, and the sounds of click and click continued to sound, seeming to be the sound of broken bones. And the green liquid, constantly seeping from under the scales, became more and more violent. If you look closely at the scales, you will find that they are already covered with cracks. Titicaca. Dr. Connors' body suddenly began to explode part by part, and scales, minced meat, bone residue, green liquid, etc. splashed out. Dr. Connors wailed in pain, and under the squeeze of the force of space, he felt that he was about to be crushed. While controlling the power of the space, Billy was paying attention to his surroundings, trying to find the figure of the old fool from Murphy-Stowe, but he didn't find anything, as if that guy had already left, and didn't care about the outcome at all. How? Boom! Suddenly, a terrifying might suddenly burst out of Dr. Connors' body. Immediately afterwards, clusters of raging flames constantly gushed out of Dr. Connors' body. Suddenly, a raging flame burned up and down Dr. Connors' body. Ah! Dr. Connors screamed in extreme pain. His body started to burn. His flesh and blood was gone, revealing the white bones inside. Hellfire. Billy's brows can't help but frown. How can there be hellfire in Dr. Connors' body? Did Mephisto give the spirit of vengeance to Dr. Connors and make Dr. Connors his Ghost Rider? However, I can't feel the breath of the spirit of vengeance in Dr. Constance's body at all. This couldn't help but make Billy quite puzzled. Roar. At this moment, Dr. Connors gave a violent roar. I saw a sturdy fire dragon roaring out of its mouth fiercely, rushing through Billy's space power, and killing him towards Billy. Shattered. Once the violent and blazing fire dragon appeared, the entire surrounding space immediately rioted. The sound of the sonic boom was endless, and the terrifying heat wave swept across the west. Fuck. Billy couldn't help cursing in a low voice, and the power of Shazam inside his body suddenly surged wildly. Meow. Above the right arm, the light of space dissipated, and the golden thunder power was extremely violent, covering Billy's entire right arm. Break for me, Billy yelled, and the power of the thunder from Zeus in his body turned into a golden thunder dragon, rushing out wildly. With this blow, Billy used all his strength like never before. Facing the Hell King Mephisto's ultimate move, the fire of hell, even if it was not launched by his real body, had to deal with it carefully. Billy can be sure that if he is caught by this hell fire that can burn even the soul, even if he is lucky enough to survive, he will be greatly injured. Boom! The red fire dragon, the golden thunder dragon, the two sides collided in full force, and suddenly burst out a group of extremely dazzling light, as well as the shocking sound of terrifying confrontation. Little Spider-Man Peter in the distance only felt that his eyes were blank, and he couldn't see anything. After a while, everything returned to normal. However, when little Spider-Man once again saw what was happening in the picture before him, Dr. Connors, who had turned into a lizard monster, was gone. Only the white bones on the ground were blown by the wind and turned into white powder. Boy, this is just an appetizer, ha ha ha. Mephisto's voice suddenly appeared, but his ghost did not know where. At the moment, Billy's face was a little ugly. Obviously, Mephisto, the king of hell, did not give Dr. Connors the precious spirit of vengeance. That hellfire is just a force that Mephisto stays in Dr. Connors' body. It can only be used once, and it needs to pay the price of life. However, even if it was just a force, it made Billy feel the power of Mephisto. Now, Billy controls only one or two of the Shazam's power in his body. Even if you have mastered it completely, it is only equivalent to the level of ordinary gods. If you want to reach the level godfather of Odin, Zeus, etc., there is still a long, long distance. To be honest, even with level godfather's other strengths, Billy didn't think he could frustrate Mephisto. After all, behind him stood a goddess of death who was one of the 5 creation gods. However, this beam has already been settled, and Billy will definitely make Mephisto pay the price. Even if you can't kill Mephisto, it will definitely make him peel off. As for the sentence left by Mephisto, the meaning is very simple. He is declaring war on Billy, the temporarily declining temple of eternal rock. In fact, Billy is not afraid of Mephisto, because of some unknown limitation. He always uses the body of dead man or the dying person every time he appears in the world. The power that his soul can control is very limited, so it is not a concern. However, Mephisto has 2 killers. One is to be able to give hell power to other lives. The second is the terrible spirit of vengeance, refined by the goddess of death, which can make the contractor incarnate into the Ghost Rider and control the power of hell fire. There is no doubt that the fire of hell is definitely a power that can match the power of Shazam, and even wins. This made Billy couldn't help feeling a sense of urgency, and his desire for strength became even stronger. At the same time, the hatred in my heart for the old guy, Mephisto, suddenly rose. The grudge between the Eternal Rock Temple and the Hell has been around for a long time, and finally broke out on this day. In the days to come, Billy will continue to encounter death challenges from Hell forces. Billy didn't think that the messy old man Mephisto was playing with him. Mephisto, as the goddess of death's powerful general, the leader of Hell, is definitely not a fool. Since he is on the bar with Billy, it is impossible to send some shrimp soldiers to tickle Lee in the future. According to the consistent style of Hell, it must be an offensive like a violent storm, completely bashing the enemy. At this time, the voice of Sorcerer Supreme Ancient One suddenly appeared in Billy's mind. "I'm waiting for you in the holy place in New York." Billy couldn't help but was stunned. Shouldn't Ancient One be in the Himalayas temple? How did you get to the holy place in New York? Could something have happened? It shouldn't be because of Mephisto, right? Billy squinted his eyes, temporarily set aside Mephisto's matter, and glanced at Dr. Connors, who had no ashes left. How to say? If Dr. Connors chooses to come here in Los Angeles or Washington, Billy promises not to show up. However, Dr. Connors chose the right time, but did not choose the right place. Once he glanced at a certain Kun's fighter plane flying over not far away, Billy couldn't help but smiled, then looked at the scared little Spider-Man and shook his head. After a while, the Queen's fighter jet stopped on the roof of the Osborne area, and the good old man Phil Coulson with sunglasses and an awkward expression took Hawkeye and Black Widow down. After World War II, the world began to carve up the cake, and Osborne Industries led them to obtain the defective super soldier serum data left over after the death of Dr. Abraham Erkin. Definitely, all of this is under the secret control of S.H.I.E.L.D. When it was learned that the Lizardmen appeared in New York, the S.H.I.E.L.D. Kun's fighter took off from the San Fe headquarters, with the goal of bringing the Lizardmen back alive. But right now, let alone the living Lizardmen, even the dead Lizardmen cannot be found. Look at the descendants of the Eternal Rock Temple who is standing on the opposite side. There is no way at all, and the heart is extremely bitter. They are just ordinary people. Even if they are demons of hell, they are not necessarily qualified to wrestle with each other. Quite a while, Phil Coulson took his gaze back from the lizard serum in the hands of little Spider-Man Peter. This was his only comfort during this trip. He immediately looked at Billy and said, "Thank you, Mr. Billy, this time, this should be solved by our S.H.I.E.L.D." What else can he say? The group of scientists from S.H.I.E.L.D., including the director, wanted to bring back the living Connors. After all, although lizard serum can cause changes in appearance, it still has merits in general. A broken limb reborn alone is enough for S.H.I.E.L.D. to pardon Connors for the crime committed. Billy took a look at Phil Coulson with interest. He knew exactly what he was coming from, and said indifferently, "You don't have to say thank you for your responsibilities." Phil Coulson paused, then asked quite ambitiously, "Mr. Billy, that lizard serum, can I take it home?" A smile appeared at the corner of Billy's mouth. Without speaking, he looked at Phil Coulson so quietly. Phil Coulson suddenly felt that he was about to collapse, and the atmosphere was so depressing that it almost killed him. He didn't even dare to look at Billy more than once. He was afraid that he would be scared to death if he was not careful, and that would be embarrassing. But even so, he couldn't help feeling a cold sweat and his legs trembling. The unprecedented pressure was beyond human beings. To be honest, Phil Coulson prefers to face the black marinated eggs under the 10th rage, and is unwilling to deal with Billy. But there is no way, who makes him not a S.H.I.E.L.D. director? I can only obey the orders obediently. Just as Phil Coulson waited anxiously, Billy's voice sounded very clearly. Phil Coulson's eyes lit up instantly. He raised his head and looked at the tall Billy excitedly, hurriedly grateful. Thank you, Mr. Billy, S.H.I.E.L.D. will never forget your friendship." However, Billy turned around and said with a smile at the corner of his mouth, "However, you have to do one thing for me, something that is not difficult for you." Phil Coulson's face couldn't help showing a helpless, bitter smile. He knew it would not be that simple. "Mr. Billy, please say, we S.H.I.E.L.D. must do our best. There's no way, the black marinated egg needs lizard serum, so you have to get it. Moreover, even the director said, don't mind paying some price." Chapter 91. In other words, S.H.I.E.L.D.'s current position is very embarrassing. At the beginning of the game, S.H.I.E.L.D. can be said to be a god pretending to be infinitely beautiful, with the United States captain's girlfriend card agent who saved the world sitting in it. The extraordinary world is more or less a bit of face. Outside there are super rich Howard She Stark, super scientist generation Ant-Man and so on. In a word, if this is a game of cards, Aegis draws cards are all kinds of bombs and king bombs. However, by now, how many of the veterans of the start are left? Card was squeezed out to the Ying country for retirement. A generation of Ant-Man Pym threw his company to his daughter and also lived in seclusion for the elderly. After the death of Howard Stark in a car accident, various advanced weapons, S.H.I.E.L.D. can only be purchased at market prices. The most important thing has also brought about a problem. There is a 603 fault in their connection with the extraordinary world. Currently, the unconventional team in S.H.I.E.L.D. inherits the favor of the veteran, not the favor of Aegis originally. Therefore, although S.H.I.E.L.D. claims to protect world peace, its strength is completely inconsistent with what it says. After the black braised egg came to power, he once wanted to make up for the fault in the transcendental world, but his skin color alone was enough to make the transcendental world treat him contemptuously. This is the truth. The issue of racial discrimination will not disappear with that bill. Billy said in a deep voice, "I only give you 3 days to rescue Howard's son Tony Stark from the terrorists and clean up all the borers in Stark's industry, especially the bald guy, Obadiah. Furthermore, after rescuing Tony, I handed over the big box his father Howard left to him, and gave it to Tony to use the fastest time to discover the new elements hidden inside. Have you understood?" Billy asked Phil Coulson without any emotion. Regarding this matter, Billy had no intention of interfering. At best, it would only allow Billy to receive less dividends for a period of time in the future. But now, Mephisto from hell has come to the door specially. He must improve his strength as soon as possible. If there are so many vibranium in the house, if you don't use it, wouldn't it be too wasteful? If Billy didn't know the dwarf family, Billy wouldn't let Tony, a playboy, build weapons for him. After Phil Coulson heard Billy's request, the smile on his face immediately became more bitter, and he replied helplessly, "Mr. Billy, this is really not something we shirk, but we really can't do it. There is a vampire behind Obadiah, and behind the terrorists is 10 rings. Although our S.H.I.E.L.D. specializes in handling such incidents, you should know our strength in the extraordinary world." Billy's brows wrinkled, and he didn't expect that there would be so many more things here. Obviously, the butterfly effect caused by his appearance has become bigger and bigger. In the original plot, there is no power behind Obadiah, but now there are more vampires. Vampires, also known as vampire bats, feed on blood and love the blood of virgins. They have an extremely long lifespan and an extraordinary combat effectiveness. Many people don't know that vampires are actually one of the vassal forces of hell, and the enemy is the Magician Association. As for 10 rings, Billy doesn't know, but since it can make S.H.I.E.L.D. fearful, it will definitely not be just an ordinary terrorist force. Billy was silent for a while, and then said, Lizard Serum, you can take it away, I will solve the Tony and Opadry problem, but you must take care of the rest. In addition, bring me the little Spider-Man with the fool's hat back to go to class. I am in New York, and I don't need such a joker who can only add to the chaos. Phil Coulson was overjoyed when he heard the words. He didn't even think that Billy would be so good today. It was unbelievable. He planned to give up. Thank you, Mr. Billy. After a thank you, Phil Coulson directly asked Hawkeye and Black Widow to take action, and personally brought the little Spider-Man and the Lizard Serum to Quinjet. Seeing the Kunz fighter plane that disappeared again, a smile appeared on Billy's mouth. This is the shield that everyone yearns for. I don't know the so-called, licking dog-like existence. Boom. With a loud bang, the door on the top of the building was opened violently. Quick. Listening to the movement behind, Billy doesn't have to guess that Sheriff George is here, and the speed is really slow. Sergeant George, who was covered in sweat, saw that there was only Billy on the roof, and commanded his hand to search the roof, pinned the gun to his waist, panted for breath, and walked towards Billy. Billy glanced at Inspector George curiously, and asked faintly, "Come up the stairs." Sheriff George was shocked. He didn't expect that superhero would take the initiative to speak to him. After reacting, he hurriedly replied, "Yes, I came up the stairs." Billy couldn't help but smile. More than 120. At this moment, Billy finally understood why the police would always be late in fighting at a high level. Maggie, it takes at least half an hour to climb the stairs alone. Which second villain will make the fight last for half an hour? Clean and neat is the essence of battle. It's not the ability without crushing. You can't want to destroy the building in order to show your strength. Just like the idiot cartoon that Billy watched when he was a child, he could zoom in and end the battle as soon as he came up. But the result, every time you have to be beaten half dead or evenly matched by the villain, and then the red light comes on. The battle was over, and a large area of the city was ruined. If you want to be more forceful, you will be more forceful. I really don't understand what the screenwriters are doing. Sheriff George paused, and then continued. Hello, I am George from the New York Police Department. Thank you very much for your recent may help. What do you call roar? Can you leave a contact information? Billy glanced at Inspector George suspiciously. If it hadn't been for years of friendship in his memory, he would have slapped him. A big man, he was so embarrassed to come to me for contact information. Do you think you are young and beautiful sister-in-law Liang? It's almost the same for your daughter. After seeing Billy's eyes, Chief George quickly explained, it's like this. In the recent period, I don't know why, abnormal deaths and disappearances have occurred frequently, and the number is staggering. To be honest, our police, and even the FBI, have mobilized all our forces, but we have found nothing. If it weren't for someone above, the citizens would have made trouble. Billy heard this. So, you want me to help you investigate this matter? Sheriff George nodded, looked at Billy expectantly and said, yes, can you? Billy said solemnly, if this matter is also related to hell, I will definitely not stand by and watch. To be honest, Billy is really worried. Maybe this matter is related to the old fool Mephisto. Don't be afraid of 10,000, just in case. Juan Mephisto was shameless, and went directly to the world to kill, and wantonly capture the soul to enhance its strength. It would be no fun. In the movie, Chariot of Souls, Mephisto contracted the ghost men, not just for the soul. It's just that in the film, Mephisto still has more face, and only hunts sinful souls. But one thing is certain, the goddess of death behind Mephisto definitely supports Mephisto's slaughter. You know, the root cause of Thanos' way of collecting infinite gems and killing half of his lives is the goddess of death. Sheriff George was excited and thanked. Thank you, I thank you for all the citizens of New York. Billy waved his hand casually. He didn't care about this kind of gratitude without any substantial benefits, and then asked, I heard that Joker who can swing acrobatics is your daughter's boyfriend. Sergeant George was shocked. His face could not help but darkened again. When he mentioned this matter, he was in a bad mood and nodded helplessly. At this moment, he felt that it seemed that it was not enough to just ban his daughter, and that all the windows of his daughter's room had to be knocked up. In fact, he didn't object to his daughter's dating, but the special little Spider-Man dared to abduct his daughter to such a dangerous place, that would not work. In short, he is firmly opposed to his daughter and little Spider-Man. If it is allowed to develop, his daughter will definitely be killed by the angry young little Spider-Man. At this time, Billy went on to say, if I remember correctly, don't Midtown colleges and universities need students to take public welfare credits every year? In your capacity, it should be easy to operate. Inspector George's eyes suddenly lit up. What do you mean? Billy smiled faintly. What? Do you still want to catch little Spider-Man? Sheriff George nodded, but shook his head again. If he dares to arrest Peter, it is estimated that his daughter Gwen would be the first person in the family to rebel against him. Even a good guy would. What's more, the superhero played by little Spider-Man Peter is exactly the boyfriend that every young girl dreams of. Definitely, this is definitely not comparable to the one in front of you. Sheriff George felt that if his daughter knew the one in front of him first, then there would be nothing to do with little Spider-Man Peter, and he would be able to have another super son-in-law. It's a pity that my daughter's unwillingness to live up to her, how she fancy it is such a defective product, except that she is better than ordinary people and can play with cobweb, she looks like a superhero. Brainless angry youth, social cancer in the name of justice, villains who wantonly disrupt the stability and order. This is Sheriff's extremely pertinent evaluation of little Spider-Man Peter, absolutely without any personal grievances, and it's a matter of fact. Billy shrugged. If that's the case, send someone to stare at him and let him do his best for social welfare. The battle is over, and the congestion on the streets will not be resolved in a short while. Moreover, such scenes are expected to increase in the future. The fighting broke out, and the Melon Eaters began to make a strategic shift towards New Jersey on the other side of the river. The battle is over and the strategic shift is over. Repeatedly. In short, New York is a big city, but also a great and brilliant city. No one can let a New Yorker leave here forever. Whether New York is heaven or hell. Meow. With a wave of Billy's hand, a circle of electric sparks appeared in front of him, stepped in, and in a blink of an eye, he arrived at the holy place in New York. You came. As soon as Billy arrived, the familiar voice of Ancient One Magician came to Billy's ears. Yes, I'm here. Did something happen to the dark dimension? Or about Mephisto? Billy asked curiously. Ancient One Magician turned to look at Billy, his face a little dignified. Time has changed, the seal of the earth has begun to weaken, and the suppression of other worlds has weakened. Billy frowned when he heard this, and his face suddenly became ugly. Can demons or gods come? Ancient One replied. It's not possible for the time being, but the strength that their duplication can exert is constantly getting stronger, and it won't be far from the arrival of the true body. Billy breathed a sigh of relief, and there was still a certain buffer time to prepare. The urgency in his heart couldn't help becoming stronger, and he must improve his strength as soon as possible. If you have level Godfather, even the strength of creation level, you will not be afraid at all, you will destroy as many as you will, and you will directly kill until no one dares to invade the earth. Ancient One continued. I have used the power of time to check, the source and hope of this matter are all in your body. Billy was stunned, and then he thought it seemed reasonable. The appearance of Own has already caused a butterfly effect for the development of this world, and it is even enough to change the direction of all major events in the future. As for saying that he is hope, Billy is disrespectful. After all, he knows the future better than Sorcerer Supreme Ancient One, which has the power of time. This is enough for Billy to always take the lead in important events. Ancient One nodded, and said solemnly, yes, it's you. Now, Dormammu, the Space Lord of the Dark Dimension, has reached a cooperation agreement with the Hell Lord Mephisto to invade the Earth through Hell, and all the souls obtained will go to Hell, and the Earth will belong to Dormammu. So, you must improve your strength as soon as possible, otherwise, you will not be able to cope with the challenges from Hell. After all, now is different. Billy was silent. The era of great chaos is about to begin, even more chaotic and terrifying than I know. The matter of enhancing strength is imminent. It is absolutely unrealistic to count on others, and Dormammu has enough of Ancient One's headaches. If you can't take up the important task of fighting Hell, then, in the end, the real special code will be finished. Do you have any good suggestions? If you want to increase your strength as soon as possible, and it is still enough to match the strength of gods and demons, it is not that easy, otherwise the world will be messed up long ago. Ancient One said in a deep voice, "You should know that I drew power from the dark dimension. You can also do the same. Anyway, it has been against the dark dimension and hell. Why can't you plunder their original power? Moreover, you already have the power of the previous generation of Eternal Rock Temple Magician in your body, and your strength has increased much faster than me. Once you are fully in control, you can have the power of a god." Billy's eyes lit up, and Ancient One's words are very reasonable. Anyway, they have been on the bar, why can only they invade the earth where we are, and we can't plunder the original power of the world where they are? Understood, I know what to do, and I will definitely make the horrible old man Mephisto regret being an enemy of me. As he spoke, a sharp look flashed across Billy's eyes. Ancient One continued, "You already know about the kidnapping of a certain playboy. He is very important, he has the wisdom of God. Now that the world has changed, it is no longer the original society it used to be. The power of science and technology cannot be underestimated, and it can also play a vital role at critical times. We must rescue him. You are responsible for dealing with Obadiah and the hell forces behind him. I am responsible for freeing Tony and dealing with the 10 rings who kidnapped him." Billy pondered for a while. As the future Iron Man, his growth is huge amounts of. His importance is irreplaceable. The brain that can develop a machine that travels through time and space is enough to explain everything. Although the power of time can also allow Billy to travel through time and space, the premise is that Billy can control enough power of time, otherwise, no talk. Then, Billy asked with some doubts, "Is 10 rings strong?" Ancient One hesitation for a while, but still told Billy the secret. The founder of 10 rings is actually Fu Manchu, a traitor to the previous generation of Himalayas temples. Billy understands that it turns out that, full of adults, has its own people, not a certain actor invented it. It's just that the origin is really surprising. It turned out to be a traitor from the Himalayas temple. It seems that this 8th floor has also hooked up with Dormammu, but he is much smarter than a traitor who has braided up, and lives a lot more. Billy nodded and said clearly, "Don't worry, I will keep it secret for you, then this matter is set, we will make a quick decision." After bidding farewell to Ancient One, Billy first contacted Inspector George using an anonymous phone, asked him to stare at Obadiah 24 hours a day, and informed Inspector George that the case he asked to help with the investigation was related to Obadiah. Regarding this matter, Billy is not talking nonsense, he learned about it from Ancient One. Of those disappearances, 9 out of 10 are done by Obadiah and the gangs he secretly cultivated. As for the abnormal death cases, they are related to the vampire family. According to Ancient One, something unknown seems to have happened inside the vampire, causing it to prepare to tear up the armistice agreement and start the war again. There is a long story about this armistice agreement. The war between vampires and humans has a long history, at least for thousands of years. This is a very annoying creature. Although it is dressed in human skin and has similar living habits to humans, they are natural enemies of humans. Vampires prey on humans as food. The relationship between humans and vampires is like hunters and prey. It is a completely different creature, and it is absolutely wrong to attribute it to humans. Although human beings can become vampires through their first embrace, the essence of vampires is definitely not humans, but rather inferior demons, specially created by Hell King Mephisto to hunt humans and obtain souls. Vampires are magical creatures, and they cannot be measured by scientific standards. To kill them must rely on special weapons, otherwise even if their heads are chopped off, they will still grow a new head. But the birth of a vampire is so easy, it can't be killed at all, and it always pops up one after another. Coupled with the temptation of immortality, a large number of humans yearn for it, wishing to become a vampire. In this way, the Armistice Agreement was born. Human society regularly provides a part of blood to vampires in exchange for an agreement that the vampires will no longer do evil. This is why the human blood bank is always insufficient, and free blood donations are used to support vampires. Shao, with a wave of Billy's hand, a circle of electric sparks appeared, stepped into it, and came to a certain art collection in London, Ying Country. There is no doubt that this is the home base of Billy and Wonder Woman Diana. Billy first had a small meeting with Diana, and then began the strength improvement plan. The hands were knotted, and the golden magical curse imprints continued to sink into the void. Not long after, a channel connecting the power of Hell's origin condensed. There was a sneer at the corner of Billy's mouth. A complex hexagram magic circle was condensed on his chest, and then it spun quickly, releasing an extremely powerful suction. A source of Hell power was madly sucked into it. That is the basis for building a world, and that is the vitality that Hell can exist. It originally does not carry any power, and naturally it has no attributes. In essence, it is an extremely vast energy. Under Billy's urging, the source of Hell's power was all transformed into pure mana, integrated into Billy's body, making Billy's strength rapidly improve. At this moment, Billy's body suddenly glowed with golden light, and the power of Shazam hidden in his body was quickly activated and was controlled by Billy. Along with an astonishing power rising, the six-pointed star magic circle in front of Billy's golden light exploded. Anyway, this is the original power of Hell, and it will never damage the stability and life of the earth. Billy will not be the slightest polite. Feeling the rapid increase in his body's strength, Billy was very excited, full of admiration for the late first-generation Sorcerer Supreme, and he was able to create such a heaven-defying plundering spell. In essence, this is not much different from Dormammu, the ruler of darkness, swallowing other worlds to increase his own power. Both are to build the original power of the world. However, this approach will accelerate the decline and fall of the plundered world, leading to its inability to continue to provide for its lives, and in serious cases, it will even collapse. Therefore, Agamotto lists this spell as a forbidden spell. Except for the Sorcerer Supreme, other magicians must not learn it. Otherwise, in the face of the temptation of power, the ghost knows how much trouble it will cause. Hell, a magnificent palace. A tall, thin man, wearing dark red leather armor and a black cloak behind his back, sat with a weak face. If he shaved his goatee, he should be a handsome young guy. Temple of Eternal Rock, aren't you the messengers of God that have always been autistic? One day you will also plunder my Hell's original power, and it really is declining. At the moment, Mephisto really wanted to come to the world, first mocking Billy fiercely, and then killing Billy like a cat and mouse. However, this is impossible. Because that is the earth, a special existence has great restrictions on them. Otherwise, he would have slapped Billy to death a long time ago, and even Ancient One could not have grown to where it is today. The forces on Earth are very weak. However, Mephisto won't just leave it alone. He is a must-see master. He has to teach Billy a little lesson so that Billy knows that the power of Hell is not so plundering, and he has to pay a price for it. Mephisto snorted coldly and waved his hand. A gray energy immediately passed into the void and flew to New York. Boom! A dazzling fire burst directly in the air abruptly, and an airplane that had just climbed not long ago turned into a huge amounts of firework directly over New York. In an instant, the fire was everywhere. The shockwave produced by the explosion swept across the four directions, directly shifting an aircraft that was just about to take off not far below from its original takeoff course, and galloped toward another course 100 meters away. The entire cabin was shaking constantly, and the passengers who had just closed their eyes ready to sleep screamed, and the scene suddenly fell into chaos and panic. In the cockpit, the flightman hurriedly stepped on the landing gear tire brakes, turned on the speed brake, and reversed the engine. Finally, another tragedy was avoided, and he did not hit another plane that was staying on the channel and was about to take off. At this moment, the emergency plan of the New York airport responded quickly, and the Air Traffic Control Bureau, the FBI, and the New York Police Department each issued their own deployment. Wow, wow, wow! The fire truck in the airport sounded its siren and drove quickly to the scene of the accident. Billy, who was thousands of miles away, stopped plundering the ground. CFAJ, the power of the prison source, and a fierce color flashed in his eyes. He felt the breath from hell, and he bet it was definitely something the other party made him perceive deliberately. Otherwise, how could he still perceive such a lost hell power in London and Ying country? Meow. Billy used the cross-space teleportation technique and came to the sky above the New York airport. He raised his eyebrows and looked at the light that fell to the ground. The blazing flames and the smoke rising from the sky were unusually conspicuous in the darkness. The light condenses and condenses in the air like a demon with the smoke, forming a face in Billy's eyes, like a demon appearing in the smoke, and then making an evil laugh when he looks at everything that happens in front of him. Billy doesn't need to guess. This is Mephisto's old fool demonstrating to him, and by the way, he collects a wave of living souls to improve his performance. In fact, even if he does nothing, a large number of souls enter hell every day to enrich his power. The flame was burning fiercely, and the temperature was chasing the scorching summer. As for the scene, I couldn't bear to look directly at the scene, especially the inexplicable smell of meat in the air, which made a burning bounce sound from time to time. Although the 4 fire engines were dispatched, the fire still did not abate, and there was a tendency for me to burn all the aviation fuel cleanly. This is the fire of hell. How can it be extinguished by mere ordinary water? Although Billy can extinguish it, what is the use of extinguishing it? Accidents have already occurred and people have died, but it is a waste of mana. Unless the old guy Mephisto is willing to take action to bring all these passengers back to life, but this is impossible at all. Mephisto hopes that all the people on Earth are dead. You know, Mephisto is a famous iron rooster. He wants to take a life from him. He will either let the goddess of death speak, or he will go straight to the hell. Billy looked around coldly, shouting, sirens, and explosions. After arriving at the scene of the accident, Billy felt a breath of law from hell. Obviously, Mephisto is really moving this time. In previous battles, Billy has fought against dark forces and hell forces. Although these are high-level forces, none of them involve the level of law. What is the law? The rule established by God cannot be changed. To fight against it, there is only law. Before long, Chief George of the New York Police Department also arrived. At the moment, Chief George had a headache. The Lizard Man incident just ended last night. Tonight, there was another plane explosion with no small movement. He felt that if he didn't handle it well, he could retire early. The fire gradually went out of its own accord, revealing the wreckage inside, shockingly shocking. This is a major event that can make all major law enforcement agencies in New York sleepless. Billy wasn't angry either. He didn't have an antisocial personality and his spirit was normal. It's just that Billy has the memory of his previous life. For him, this place, in the final analysis, is a playground. As for the instigator of Mephisto, the same is true. The lives of mortals are not worth mentioning, and at best they think it is quite fun. At this moment, all flights in the entire airport were stopped, and every remaining plane was checked one by one. Even the flights that have arrived in the sky are hovering in the air and are not allowed to land. Unless the fuel is exhausted, they will land in the temporarily designated safe area according to the instructions of the tower. The office floor of the airport is very busy, with constant keyboard tapping. The airport personnel on duty tonight will not get any chance to rest anyway. Billy was led by Sergeant George to the interrogation room, and Sergeant George pushed open the door of the interrogation room. As soon as he walked in, Billy saw behind the glass, a young man dressed as a high school student weakly raised his forehead and said, I saw all this happen. Billy frowned suddenly. Maggie, what kind of horrible thing has this special code messed into? Death God is coming. Billy is a bit speechless about this wave of plots. It seems that if there is no wrong guess, what Mephisto has released should be a premeditated law. No matter how you do it, you can die strangely, but it is a reasonable law that dead man does not pay for your life. It is super fraud and it is impossible to prevent. However, if Death God does come, the fun will be great. At this moment, all flights in the entire airport were stopped, and every remaining plane was checked one by one. Even the flights that have arrived in the sky are hovering in the air and are not allowed to land. Unless the fuel is exhausted, they will land in the temporarily designated safe area according to the instructions of the tower. The office floor of the airport is very busy, with constant keyboard tapping. The airport personnel on duty tonight will not get any chance to rest anyway. Billy was led by Sergeant George to the interrogation room, and Sergeant George pushed open the door of the interrogation room. As soon as he walked in, Billy saw behind the glass, a young man dressed as a high school student weakly raised his forehead and said, I saw all this happen. Billy frowned suddenly. Maggie, what kind of horrible thing has this special code messed into? Death God is coming. Billy is a bit speechless about this wave of plots. It seems that if there is no wrong guess, what Mephisto has released should be a premeditated law. No matter how you do it, you can die strangely, but it is a reasonable law that dead man does not pay for your life. It is super fraud and it is impossible to prevent. However, if Death God does come, the fun will be great. At this moment, all flights in the entire airport were stopped, and every remaining plane was checked one by one. Even the flights that have arrived in the sky are hovering in the air and are not allowed to land. Unless the fuel is exhausted, they will land in the temporarily designated safe area according to the instructions of the tower. The office floor of the airport is very busy, with constant keyboard tapping. The airport personnel on duty tonight will not get any chance to rest anyway. Billy was led by Sergeant George to the interrogation room, and Sergeant George pushed open the door of the interrogation room. As soon as he walked in, Billy saw behind the glass, a young man dressed as a high school student weakly raised his forehead and said, I saw all this happen. Billy frowned suddenly. Maggie, what kind of horrible thing has this special code messed into? Death God is coming. Billy is a bit speechless about this wave of plots. It seems that if there is no wrong guess, what Mephisto has released should be a premeditated law. No matter how you do it, you can die strangely, but it is a reasonable law that dead man does not pay for your life. It is super fraud and it is impossible to prevent. However, if Death God does come, the fun will be great. At this moment, all flights in the entire airport were stopped, and every remaining plane was checked one by one. Even the flights that have arrived in the sky are hovering in the air and are not allowed to land. Unless the fuel is exhausted, they will land in the temporarily designated safe area according to the instructions of the tower. The office floor of the airport is very busy, with constant keyboard tapping. The airport personnel on duty tonight will not get any chance to rest anyway. Billy was led by Sergeant George to the interrogation room, and Sergeant George pushed open the door of the interrogation room. As soon as he walked in, Billy saw behind the glass, a young man dressed as a high school student weakly raised his forehead and said, I saw all this happen. Billy frowned suddenly. Maggie, what kind of horrible thing has this special code messed into? Death God is coming. Billy is a bit speechless about this wave of plots. It seems that if there is no wrong guess, what Mephisto has released should be a premeditated law. No matter how you do it, you can die strangely, but it is a reasonable law that dead man does not pay for your life. It is super fraud and it is impossible to prevent. However, if Death God does come, the fun will be great. At this moment, all flights in the entire airport were stopped, and every remaining plane was checked one by one. Even the flights that have arrived in the sky are hovering in the air and are not allowed to land. Unless the fuel is exhausted, they will land in the temporarily designated safe area according to the instructions of the tower. The office floor of the airport is very busy, with constant keyboard tapping. The airport personnel on duty tonight will not get any chance to rest anyway. Billy was led by Sergeant George to the interrogation room, and Sergeant George pushed open the door of the interrogation room. As soon as he walked in, Billy saw behind the glass, a young man dressed as a high school student weakly raised his forehead and said, I saw all this happen. Billy frowned suddenly. Maggie, what kind of horrible thing has this special code messed into? Death God is coming. Billy is a bit speechless about this wave of plots. It seems that if there is no wrong guess, what Mephisto has released should be a premeditated law. No matter how you do it, you can die strangely, but it is a reasonable law that dead man does not pay for your life. It is super fraud and it is impossible to prevent. However, if Death God does come, the fun will be great. At this moment, all flights in the entire airport were stopped, and every remaining plane was checked one by one. Even the flights that have arrived in the sky are hovering in the air and are not allowed to land. Unless the fuel is exhausted, they will land in the temporarily designated safe area according to the instructions of the tower. The office floor of the airport is very busy, with constant keyboard tapping. The airport personnel on duty tonight will not get any chance to rest anyway. Billy was led by Sergeant George to the interrogation room, and Sergeant George pushed open the door of the interrogation room. As soon as he walked in, Billy saw behind the glass, a young man dressed as a high school student weakly raised his forehead and said, I saw all this happen. Billy frowned suddenly. Maggie, what kind of horrible thing has this special code messed into? Death God is coming. Billy is a bit speechless about this wave of plots. It seems that if there is no wrong guess, what Mephisto has released should be a premeditated law. No matter how you do it, you can die strangely, but it is a reasonable and reasonable law that dead man does not pay for your life. It is super fraud and it is impossible to prevent. However, if death god does come, the fun will be great. At this moment, all flights in the entire airport were stopped, and every remaining plane was checked one by one. Even the flights that have arrived in the sky are hovering in the air and are not allowed to land. Unless the fuel is exhausted, they will land in the temporarily designated safe area according to the instructions of the tower. The office floor of the airport is very busy, with constant keyboard tapping. The airport personnel on duty tonight will not get any chance to rest anyway. Billy was led by Sergeant George to the interrogation room, and Sergeant George pushed open the door of the interrogation room. As soon as he walked in, Billy saw behind the glass, a young man dressed as a high school student weakly raised his forehead and said, I saw all this happen. Billy frowned suddenly. Maggie, what kind of horrible thing has this special code messed into? Death god is coming. Billy is a bit speechless about this wave of plots. It seems that if there is no wrong guess, what Mephisto has released should be a premeditated law. No matter how you do it, you can die strangely, but it is a reasonable and reasonable law that dead man does not pay for your life. It is super fraud and it is impossible to prevent. However, if death god does come, the fun will be great. Billy asked Sheriff George on the side, tell me the specific information about the bombing flight again. Inspector George glanced at the information gathered by several law enforcement agencies on the tablet and said, Ferrero flight was originally scheduled to fly from New York's Kennedy Airport to Francis Charles de Gaulle Airport. Less than 10 minutes after takeoff, a fuel leak was caused by damaged parts, which caused the fuselage to explode. All passengers except the high school student in front of them were spared. When Billy heard it, well, that's right. Sure enough, from the very beginning, this place was not a serious and beautiful world. Everything can enter into it, as long as it is related to old beauty. In other words, if you are so messy, aren't you afraid that the earth will directly explode tomorrow and go on strike? Billy feels that compared to the various deaths in the plot of Death God is Coming, it has to be said that the explosion of the earth is a thankful thing. Inside the interrogation room, Alex, who was only 17 years old this year, was in confusion, shock and pain. He didn't know why he had such a dream. However, if he could do it again, he would rather do it again. Suddenly, the door of the interrogation room opened. Alex looked up at the two tall men who walked in. Billy Dama pulled the chair away, sat down, and stared at Alex with a small spot on his face. Sheriff George stood beside Billy without speaking. From the moment Billy appeared, he already knew that he was not able to intervene in this matter. To be honest, Sheriff George saw Billy openly and irritably. Although Chief George and Billy had formal contact once, they knew very well that the appearance of Billy often represented one thing, that is, the accident was related to hell. You don't need to know what's going on. Just the word, hell, is enough to scare all normal people away. Ghosts are happy to deal with hell. Do you think you have lived too long? For a while, Billy stared at Alex quietly. In this breathless contest, Alex raised his head and faltered and said, Can I go, sir? Billy smiled and asked, what do you think? Alex wants to cry. Billy stared at Alex and said in a deep voice, go ahead, tell me everything that happened in your dream. Although Billy has an answer, he is still ready to find out. Don't be afraid of 10,000, just in case. In case Mephisto really released Death God, it would really be a headache. However, no matter what the result is, the law enforcement agencies are already prepared to deal with the above and the plan of the people. Such a big thing has happened. Although the cause of the explosion has not been finalized, the preliminary investigation on the spot has been released. Accident. An extremely sad and heart-wrenching accident. The cause was a small loose part in the fuel tank. Alex swallowed a bit dryly, and Billy nodded directly at the police chief George, who was aside. Not long after, a glass of water was delivered to Alex's hand. Drink it, let's talk after you drink it. Thanks. Alex looked at Billy, who was surprisingly kind, and was slightly taken aback. The aviation police who had just invited him here regarded him as the culprit. After drinking a big sip of water, Alex wiped his lips, holding the water glass with both hands, and recalled with some restlessness, we are planning to take this flight to France for off-campus travel courses. Everything was fine when I boarded the plane. My classmates and I were talking and laughing, but after I was scratched by the raised spikes on my seat, a voice whispered in my ears to go. Then, the plane shook suddenly after taking off, and then it exploded. The fire swallowed me, and then I woke up. After. Speaking of the end, Alex seemed to have lost his strength, staring at the water glass in his hand innocently. Billy sitting opposite did not say anything, but quickly matched Alex with the original plot in his memory. Billy shook his head. As expected, it was the plot in Death God is Coming, and it was completely matched. I just don't know if the Death God inside has appeared. However, no matter whether it appears or not, that power of law must be dealt with, otherwise, the ghost will know how much trouble it will cause. Whether it's impossible, isn't it clear that I'm confessing to the terrible old man Mephisto? Billy raised his right hand, grabbed it out of thin air, and a golden staff appeared in Billy's hand. Tracking technique. Billy's mind moved, and the power of Shazam in his body suddenly poured into the staff. Click. There was a blast of thunder, and the golden thunder filled the staff immediately. Boom. Billy hurled the staff in his hand to the ground, and countless golden lights suddenly shot in all directions, looking for the breath of the earth. Not long after, Billy received a piece of feedback and turned to Sheriff George and said, "Organize a group of police forces and set off with me. As for this little kid, you can let him go." After a while, here, Billy turned on a circle of electric sparks casually, and then led Inspector George into it. New Amsterdam Hospital. ... As soon as Billy came to this ghost place, he smelled a disgusting smell, from the breath of necromantic magician. A state of soul, no consciousness, a garbage creature unique to hell. As for why this necromancer magician appeared in the hospital, it was naturally to devour the soul and strengthen his own power. Dead man realm. Billy looked at the hospital in front of him, frowned, and murmured in a low voice. Sheriff George on the side asked curiously, "Sir, what is the realm of the dead?" Although he doesn't know, but he can be sure that it will definitely not be a good thing. Billy explained. A kind of trick of the Hell Soldier City, can accelerate the death of life, and swallow the soul of the dead to increase their strength. Coupled with the premeditated law's secret interference, there should have been a lot of people dead in this hospital, and maybe your police station has already received a report. Sheriff George couldn't help swallowing when he heard the words. His face was a little pale. This is the realm and the law again, it's really scary. Shall we still go in? Inspector George asked uncomfortably. Billy smiled and said faintly, "If you want to find death, you can definitely go in." Inspector George shook his head quickly. "Sir, I still trouble you, we won't go in." Police Billy glanced at Inspector George, who he recognized directly. Inspector George nodded immediately and said, "Okay, sir." Billy slowly approached the hospital. A golden light flashed in his eyes, and everyone's body was more or less entwined with a gray death breath. The physical condition is less, and the physical condition is more. Woo. Billy walked slowly along the stairs towards the basement of the New Amsterdam Hospital. There was endless horror of ghosts, and it seemed that a certain necromantic magician had perceived Billy's approach. Immediately after that, in just a few seconds, a black line of black aura condensed appeared on the originally snow-white wall, and it spread at an incredible speed. Billy snorted coldly, and a circle of golden brilliance swept from under his feet to all directions, directly sweeping the black line that was enveloped in it. A necromancer, magician, also wanted to put a curse on Lao Tzu. Billy continued to walk down. His nose wrinkled slightly, the stench in the air made him feel very uncomfortable, it smelled so terribly, he just wanted to vomit. If there are all these guys in hell, how bad is the air quality in hell? It's not the place where people live at all. It's probably the sour old man like Mephisto. After going down 2 floors, the surrounding temperature dropped sharply. If it is a blazing sun outside, this is an extremely cold place. Cold. The kind of icy cold. Billy glanced at the corpse that had fallen on the ground not far away, had frozen into ice, and seemed to be sucked up with blood all over the body. A golden thunder power gleamed from his body and entered a state of alert. The necromancer magician is nearby. Although the strength of the necromancer magician cannot be compared with that of the devil, they are able to avoid restrictions and are directly thrown onto the earth by Mephisto. By the way, they also bring a premeditated law that can cause some accidental deaths. Ah! Roar! Suddenly, a black fog smashed through the iron door of the morgue at the end of the corridor, and Magician appeared, wrapped in a black gust of wind, wearing a black cloak, and turning into a skeleton. It opened its sharp claws and rushed towards Billy like a hungry tiger, staring at Billy with scarlet eyes, full of anger. There are also the black cursing power that shrouded Billy like a sharp arrow. Billy looked at the necromantic magician in disdain. If it was a day ago, he might still have a headache, but at the moment, there was only mockery. Humph! Boom! Billy snorted coldly, and an extremely violent power suddenly surged from his body. Here, a wave of golden thunder power enveloped the whole body, and the terrifying thunder light was like a fierce python, shooting frantically in all directions, just like Thor came to the world. Ah! The terrible ghost cry suddenly sounded, and the menacing undead magician directly withered, and most of the black fog disappeared in an instant, and the whole body was full of thunder and rolled around. You know, with the help of the power of hell, Billy's control of the power of Shazam has almost reached half. A necromantic magician. Click! An arm-thin thunder blasted down from Billy's palm, and blasted fiercely on the body of the undead magician. Boom! With a big explosion, the body formed by the black mist collapsed directly and scattered, leaving only a few black rags. At this time, a gray power of law shot out, trying to go far. Billy was already ready. The light of the space in the right hand was masterpiece, a blue portal appeared above the premeditated law, and he entered it accurately and accurately. As for where this premeditated law will go, Billy is not particularly clear, anyway, it is in remote outer space. The method of premeditating law to create death is absolutely chilling. Anything inconspicuous around you can become a deadly weapon all the time, and all around you. Merely filling up the picture with your brain is already terrifying. However, after losing the premeditated law of the carrier of the necromancer magician, it will not take long before it will return to the embrace of its Allah. The necromancer magician is resolved, but Billy's mood will not be a little bit happy because of it. This matter is far from over. Billy won't be obedient to eat this sorrowful loss, he must give Mephisto back. Billy waved his hand casually, calling out a circle of electric sparks, and appeared in front of Sheriff George and the others again. Inspector George replied. Before he came, I found out that Obadiah had sent his men secretly to the Hudson River near the mouth of the sea. There used to be a transit terminal, which was responsible for the short-distance connection between the Hudson River and the New York port. However, with the reconstruction and expansion of the New York port, this terminal was abandoned in the late 1970s. Quote, because it is far away from the city and lack of job opportunities, this wharf area has also been abandoned. After decades, it has also become desolate. But now, suddenly, a gang that was cultivated secretly by Obadiah is tightly guarded, and we still need to continue to investigate the specific situation. Billy said directly. You don't need to investigate, you'll know after a visit. Before the words were over, Billy once again activated the cross-space teleportation technique and went to the dock mentioned by Sheriff George. At the moment, in the warehouse on the pier, the bald Obadiah is receiving a young arrogant man. Mr. Mark, the quantity of goods this time should meet your requirements. Obadiah said humbly to the young man in front of him. Quantity is one thing, but as food, they are too stinky. The young man had just checked the goods in the warehouse, and was covering his nose with his handkerchief, as if the smell was still in the air. Mr. Mark, the goods are hard to find now. The government's inspections are getting stricter and stricter. We can only find enough goods from foreign countries to provide you. Obadiah has been cautious, for fear of annoying the other party. But, I need some better food for the nobles. The food they hope is pure and pure. Mark ignored Obadiah's complaint and threatened. You know it didn't meet our requirements. The end of the game. Obadiah is full of bitterness. It is too troublesome to deal with these people. As long as the other party is upset, you can guarantee that you will experience the pain of life better than death. If it wasn't for their power to control the entire Stark industry, or even more for being able to live forever, he wouldn't be a horseman for this group of people. Boom! Billy kicked open the heavy iron gate of the warehouse and walked in. This warehouse was originally a barn used for loading and unloading grain. The United States is the world's largest grain exporter, and the exported grain accounts for more than 20% of the world's total grain exports. Such a barn near the port is built by many large grain companies. It was not until the expansion of the New York port and the grain company directly moved its granary to New York. Have you ever seen the feeling of tens of thousands of eyes reflecting the faint moonlight in the dark and then staring at you? It is a tingling sensation on the scalp. However, Billy said, fortunately, there is no discomfort. The entire warehouse was completely remodeled by Obadri. It was no longer an empty warehouse for storing food, but rows of cells were built along the walls. Each cell was sealed with steel bars. The small cell was only 6 square meters, but 6 people had to be squeezed into it. The simple bed board is directly fixed on the wall. The purpose of these methods is to save space and fit more people. These imprisoned people are food for vampires. Billy wasn't in the mood to count how many cells there were and how many people were in it. He was here to kill. However, the taste in it is really too difficult. Thousands of people eat and drink in a warehouse. No matter how well the warehouse is ventilated, it is difficult to solve it. Click. As soon as Billy appeared, the burly men beside Obadiah immediately took up the weapons in their hands and pointed their black holes at Billy. Suddenly, the rapid sound of shooting sounded immediately, and the dense bullets poured out and enveloped Billy. As far as these bloody desperados are concerned, as long as they are not theirs, no matter what they are, they will kill them all. Now that you have embarked on this path, if you want to mix better and longer, you must be cruel and decisive. As for why the people outside would let the other person in, even if they wanted to know, it was after the intruder was resolved. Moreover, based on past experience, in this case, 9 out of 10 people outside are already dead. Anyway, chat first, then start a fight. That is something new entrants can do only. Block, block, block. One after another bullets fell on Billy's body, making a crisp metal strike, but it was unable to cause any effective damage to Billy. Billy slowly raised his right hand, the blue light bloomed, and the space around the desperados suddenly twisted. Bang, bang, bang. In the blink of an eye, the bodies of those desperados suddenly exploded, blood, pieces of meat, bones, etc. splashing around, a bloody stroke. Obadiah looked at Billy blankly. His eyes were full of shock, and his face was even more panicked. The corners of his mouth twitched again and again, and he did not dare to wipe the face and the flesh and blood on his head. He was so scared that he said no. Something went wrong. During this period of time, he knew that the world is far from being as simple as imagined. There are not only a few existences with super abilities. The number is astonishing. Take the vampires he knows as an example. It is not 3 or 2 kittens and fishes at all, but a large group of tens of thousands. Mark frowned, feeling the heart palpitating power from Billy's body. Especially the one hand just now is really incredible and terrible. Even his boss may not be able to do it. After all, he has never thought that his boss has such a person. However, as a vampire, Mark has something worthy of comfort. At least they are not so easy to be killed. Even if they are blown up, they can survive. Marxelin said inwardly, "Who are you? I advise you not to be nosy. There are some people in this world that you can't afford." Billy smiled disdainfully, fully able to feel the fear in the other's voice, which was trembling. "The same, give it to you. Tell me, where is your base camp? Otherwise, die." Billy walked towards Mark slowly, and his cold words engulfed him with a colder aura, which pierced Mark's body like a sharp blade, making him feel a strong sense of death crisis. Mark couldn't help backing back again and again. As an impenetrable vampire, how could he resist Billy's demigod coercion? And his tongue trembled and said, "You, don't come here, but, vampire, you kill it won't kill me." "Ah." Billy smiled coldly, taunting, "Are you sure vampires can't be killed?" Meow. Before he finished his words, Billy's fingertips suddenly revealed a golden thunder. Mark was suddenly shocked, and the speed of his heartbeat increased sharply. Although he didn't know what it was, he was certain that he could definitely kill himself. At this moment, Mark's heart was full of unprecedented fear. As Billy said, vampires are not invincible, they can be killed, but they cannot rely on ordinary weapons or normal means. To kill vampires, you must use high-concentration garlic extract, or strong ultraviolet light. The intensity of ultraviolet rays is at least the intensity of sunlight emitted during the year when the Earth is closest to the Sun. The intensity of ultraviolet rays at night, or the intensities of sunlight in winter, can hardly cause enough damage to vampires. There are also weapons made with mithril, which can also cause enough damage to vampires, making them unhappy. However, the weapon of mithril must directly hit the vitals of the vampire, such as the heart or the head, in order to guarantee the direct killing of the vampire. Moreover, things like mithril are magical materials and are controlled by the magic association. It is impossible for ordinary people to come into contact with it, just like vibranium. In addition to these, there are magical powers, etc., which can also kill vampires. Billy's figure flickered, and suddenly appeared in front of Mark like a ghost. Click! The thunder mang at his fingertips violently exploded in the void, releasing an extremely terrifying power, and directly scared Mark to sit on the ground, trembling all over. Billy asked without any emotion, "Say, or, don't you?" Mark was sweating, his face was pale, and he hurriedly said, I said, in a manner in the suburbs, that is the headquarters of the pure-blooded vampire in New York. A smile appeared at the corner of Billy's mouth, and a small thunder light shot out from his fingertips and plunged into Mark's body like lightning. The golden thunder light extended along the direction of the blood vessels of the human body to Mark's whole body until the golden light covered Mark's whole body. When the light reached its peak, Mark was like a fully inflated balloon starting to inflate, and then the balloon could not fit so much air and was burst. Ah! Mark hit an explosion like an inflated balloon. The explosion did not form an imaginary shockwave, but directly decayed in the air. A plume of fly ash from his body, as soon as the wind blows, it is directly scattered between the sky and the earth, and there is no trace of it anymore. This way of death is absolutely visually impactful to the bald Opidry standing on the side. Opidry's legs can't stop trembling in fright, and there is an unknown yellow under his feet, liquid. Billy looked at Obadiah. His eyes were like wind, his eyes were like knives, and he could kill. Boom! Obadiah knelt directly in front of Billy. Please, don't kill me, I can give you a lot of money, a lot of women, don't kill me. Billy smiled coldly, and a golden thunder light shot out, instantly sinking into Opidry's bald head. With a loud explosion, red and white things splashed out. But at this moment, an accident happened. A cloud of thick black mist suddenly poured out of Opidry's body, turning into a grimace and grinning grimly at Billy, and then rushing towards Billy. Oops, not good, hidden. Billy's pupils dilated instantly, and it turned out to be the power of a curse. Boom! The power of Shazam in Billy's body instantly circulated frantically, with golden thunder glows shining all over his body, and the terrifying power rose up, almost overturning the entire warehouse. However, not waiting for Billy to move, that grimace instantly submerged into Billy's body, and the speed was horribly fast, far surpassing Billy's reaction speed. The gray cursing power covered Billy's body. The violent thunder power suddenly quieted down. Billy's power was greatly reduced, and the power of Shazam was directly banned. If it hadn't swallowed a large amount of the power of the Hell Source before, which greatly increased the control of the power of Shazam, at this moment, the power of Shazam in Billy's body would definitely not be able to use any more. At this moment, Billy's face suddenly darkened. You don't need to guess that the old cunning guy Mephisto has a powerful curse in Obadiah's body. Once anyone kills Obadiah, whoever will be entangled by this curse. Moreover, the power of this curse specifically restrains the power in Billy's body. Mephisto, as the king of hell, possesses the power of level Godfather. Even the old Shazam in his heyday can't compete with it. He naturally controls some restraint methods. However, this is also the limit that Mephisto can do right now, unless he can break through the limitations of the earth and use more and stronger forces. The laughter of arrogant Pinpin, suddenly. When it sounded, a gray gust of wind appeared out of thin air, and then he transformed into a thin and tall man, filled with great power of hell, and his face was extremely gloomy. It's really, I didn't expect that the descendants of the dignified Eternal Rock Temple would have fallen to this point. How much power can you exert in your body? If you want to break through the ban of the power of the curse, the power needed is extremely large. If the old Shazam is still alive, maybe he can help you unlock it. As for now, ha ha ha, happy. Obviously, this guy has a great resentment towards the Temple of Eternal Rock in his heart. In hell, basically no demon does not hate the Temple of Eternal Rock. If it weren't for the limitations on the earth, they would have teamed up and turned over the Temple of Eternal Rock one by one. Up. Billy's face was dark, and he was obviously in a bad mood. There was a faint anger in his body that was burning. He said coldly, "Wind demon, don't you think you are too happy too soon? In my eyes, there is no difference between you and the 7 deadly sins. It's just a miscellaneous hair. Even if you shrunk your true body in hell, Lao Tzu will still slap you to death." The wind demon's frantic laughter stopped abruptly, and he looked at Billy with a grim face, and snorted coldly, "The power is sealed, and you dare to be so crazy. The eternal rock temple is indeed inferior to the generation. Today, Lao Tzu must teach him a lesson, and dare to rob us of the power of hell. You are really looking for death." When the words fell, the wind demon rose into the sky again, turning into a gray gust of wind, and countless sharp wind blades immediately rushed towards Billy. Billy looked at the violent wind transformed by the wind demon with disdain. "It's just a dog under the messy old man Mephisto, and he wants to teach me, who is looking for death. Do you really think I only have that ability?" Billy yelled and raised his right arm. The blue light of space bloomed brightly, and all the space in front of him fell under Billy's control. Click on it. The sound of dense blasting sounded crazily, and in the blink of an eye, those wind blades all burst and dissipated, and even the gust of wind transformed by the wind demon was imprisoned in the air. The gray gust of wind was tumbling violently impacting everything around it, but it was always firmly imprisoned in one place, and no results could be produced. "No, this is impossible. You might be able to control such a powerful spatial force." A horrified grimace appeared in the wind, looking at Billy in disbelief. "Ah," Billy smiled coldly, "you don't need to know." The right hand shook violently, and the force of the space confining the wind demon suddenly squeezed it violently. "What?" Feng Mo's painful scream suddenly sounded. "You wait for me. Sooner or later the earth will fall into our hands. I will kill you." With a loud bang, the wind demon completely turned into a breeze and disappeared. Billy put away the attack and sent a message to Sheriff George, asking him to come and clean up the mess, and he went to Diana's collection. Diana's eyebrows frowned. As soon as Billy appeared, she felt the extremely low pressure on Billy's body. "Honey, are you okay? Who offended you?" Billy shook his head and said, "It's okay, Wang's Zhao, it's just that the old Mephisto put aside his vampire puppet. I will reverse my name or not?" Diana asked immediately. "Need help?" Billy refused. "No, this matter, I want to do it myself. I will practice first." After speaking, Billy began to plunder the power of hell again. Under the influence of anger, Billy's firepower was fully activated, and his plundering speed skyrocketed. Boom! The terrible power suddenly rose from Billy's body, and the power of Shazam that had not yet been controlled was madly aroused. While Billy improved his strength, he frantically attacked Mephisto's curse. The golden thunder power raged in Billy's body, like a mad hungry wolf, destroying the power of the curse. Puffs of gray gas continued to diffuse out of Billy's body, and the band Shazam's power returned to Billy's control. Hell, at the moment, Feng Mo was very upset. He thought that after banning the opponent's power, he would definitely be able to take the opponent down in one fell swoop. But never thought that the power of the space controlled by the other party is even far above the inheritance power of its eternal rock temple, which is simply a rant. As an elite fighter under Mephisto, Feng Mo had never been slapped in the face by anyone before, and he exploded with one move, even though it was just a duplication of him, which made him feel unusually angry and slapped his face too much. This Liangzi was completely settled. It was definitely an endless situation. The wind demon would never let Billy easily. The Earth's restrictions on them had begun to weaken, and the Earth was about to end. Coincidentally, Mephisto's mood is even worse, especially after feeling the loss of Hell's original power, the pain in his heart. It takes how many pure souls to be able to replenish it. In Mephisto's heart, in addition to Billy, the hatred for a certain bald girl is also extremely strong. His own source of power to plunder the dark dimension is not enough, and it is too shameless to even help others to plunder his source of hell. Mephisto has already made up his mind. Once the restrictions on the Earth are lifted, he will lead the Hell's demon army to wash the Earth in blood, and even more violent corpses of those who oppose him. Billy plundered the power of Hell for a day and night, and then returned to New York. At the moment, the power of the curse in Billy's body has been completely cleared, and the control of the power of Shazam has reached the level of 7 or 8. Billy estimated that he would be able to completely control the power of Shazam in his body by plundering the power of Hell again. However, After this, the speed of strength improvement will slow down significantly. Billy was thinking quietly about the vampire family. How can they be completely annihilated? The family of vampires has existed for thousands of years. Many vampires have lived for hundreds of years or even thousands of years of old immortality. There is no way to know how many they are. They were created by the Hell King Mephisto to plunder human souls, and at the same time he was a dark hand he prepared to occupy the earth in the future. If there were ordinary people on the earth, and if there were no restrictions on demons on the earth, Mephisto would have raised humans on the earth in captivity long ago, just like raising pigs. They would be fattened and slaughtered before waiting for the next batch. In other words, as long as there is a vampire, he can infect more vampires. Even if it is completely annihilated, Mephisto will be able to produce another batch, which is a real headache. Moreover, vampires will not really die if they are not killed, and their strength will decline when they get older, but they will still not die. After their power declines, they need to enter a dormant state to replenish energy. When they wake up from dormancy, they are still alive and kicking vampire. As the goddess of death, Mephisto naturally controls part of the death rules, making a certain existence immortal like eating and drinking water. This makes it more difficult for vampires to exterminate. In addition, regarding the so-called first embrace of vampires, there is actually not much abuse. In fact, it is just a common mark composed of hell power, and then Mephisto does some tricks from it, so that it can live forever and have power beyond ordinary people. However, fortunately, Mephisto does not like to transform humans into vampires, which will pollute the soul he wants to get. This is the fundamental reason why vampires are not flooding. Otherwise, even with the confrontation of extraordinary powers, it will not stop Mephisto's madness, unless anyone can kill Mephisto, CFAJ, and the goddess of death will not resurrect him. In Mephisto's setting, vampires are bloodthirsty. If they don't suck blood, they will be uncomfortable to death, and they desperately desire the blood of virgins and children. Because the souls of virgins and children are Mephisto's favorite. In this way, Mephisto can ensure that this group of vampires will not stop working. In addition, due to the existence of vampires for too long, many vampire families have accumulated a huge amount of wealth, and they have their own people in the financial arms, real estate, and even the political circles. Even in the parliament with the supreme power, there are also a large number of Hagi tribes. Hagi tribe, a group of people who worship vampires. They do things for vampires, hoping to be appreciated by vampires, and then take refuge in a powerful vampire and let him transform himself into a vampire. Once many people have power and wealth, they want to keep their power and wealth forever, they want to live forever, and they want to enslave the people below them forever. In other words, there are more people who want to seek longevity after the power is increased. In the Heavenly Dynasty, there was Qin Shi Huang seeking elixir, and there were emperors and ministers of various dynasties who favored the gods and Taoists, just for their dreams of one day soaring. In short, vampires are a group of extremely annoying existences, and it is impossible to eliminate them with the power of society and the country. Even if the extraordinary world intervened, it was just a truce agreement that humiliated the country and lost power, and did not solve this problem at all. Just as Billy was thinking about it, Gu said a word before reminded him that he had a preliminary plan on how to purify the vampire family. As for whether this plan can be implemented in the end, it depends on whether someone's ability is as bad as it is bragged in the film. However, I just don't know. Gu is he rescued that guy right now, maybe he hasn't. Billy feels that he can now push a certain manor outside New York first, and prepare for his next plan. By the way, I remember I said that you are not welcome in this place. In a manor house in New York, a slightly older man was roaring angrily at a group of young people. Old Lanka, don't be so excited. This is not good for your heart. We are just borrowing for a period of time. We are compatriots and should help each other, right? The young man in the lead did not listen to the old man's words at all and took care of himself. Self said, Robert, why don't you go to New Jersey to find your boss? I don't welcome you here, dirty mixed blood. Named Lanka, the old man cursed unceremoniously. Old man, don't think we dare not kill you. The young man named Robert was obviously irritated by the dirty mixed blood. Robert and the 8 companions behind him all showed terrifying fangs and sharp claws. Their pupils began to shrink, their pupils became smaller and their whites increased. This was a sign of the vampires before they attacked. But unexpectedly, Lanka was the first to attack. Lanka held a metal cane in his hand. Normally, this cane is a gentleman's decoration. Definitely, if you use it to beat someone, it will be very painful. As an old vampire who has seen strong winds and waves, Lanka knows that he shouldn't compare blindly when he should do it. Although Lanka seemed a little old, the powerful power of vampires had not faded much. Only an afterimage could be seen waving the cane, and then it hit Robert directly in the head. Boom! The cane has a solid metal ball on the handle. This ball directly hit Robert's temple, making the sound of a blunt object hitting the human body. Robert's neck was directly interrupted, and the part of his head was directly hurt, showing an abnormal depression. I said that the dirty mixed blood under Dickon Firth is not welcome here. Renka's face was still splashed with the blood that had just hit Robert. At this time, Lanka looked very hideous, and what followed his voice was the movements of 4 bodyguards standing behind him. They showed their weapons while also showing their fangs. The 2 groups of vampires are at war in the manor, and they don't know that there are still people watching the show in the distance. It seems that vampires are not a united race, and are no different from humans. Billy murmured leisurely, hiding in the distance. Billy didn't choose to shoot immediately, but wanted to see how the plot will develop next. The owner of the manor, Lanka, is a 500-year-old vampire. He is the first group of vampires to immigrate to the New World, and he is also a pure-blooded vampire. In his opinion, a mixed-blood vampire or a blood slave should be inherently inferior to a pure-blood vampire. There are not a few pure bloods who have his thoughts. They are all proud of their pure blood. They look down on mixed-blood vampires or transformed vampires, let alone blood slaves of lower levels. In their eyes, these vampires are only worthy of being subordinates, such as some of Lanka's bodyguards. When did this low-level vampire dare to have an equal conversation with the noble pure blood? It was the Dickon Firth that brought this change, the transforming vampire. How long was he born? He actually dared to question the eternal right rule of the vampire empire for thousands of years. Lanka hated Dickon Firth, but also hated those of his followers. Kill these guys. Renka ignored Robert's accomplices, and faintly ordered to his men. The vampire bodyguards took out the magazines from the pistols expressionlessly, and took out the special magazines from their arms. This old guy really wanted to kill us, so he took out the mithril bullet. The sharp-eyed vampire has seen that the bullets in the magazines in the hands of the bodyguards are different. Get these guys done, someone Gauror said. The 8 young vampires all took out their pistols and short knives, preparing to preemptively. For vampires, no matter how bad they are, they can recover. Therefore, even if Robert's neck was interrupted by Lanka, it was not a big deal. It was just a little painful, but he would never die. He would rest for a day or 2 at most. However, the injuries caused by mithril cannot be recovered by the vampire. This is something that can cause fatal damage. Just a slight contact with the skin will cause a severe burning sensation and scars that are difficult to recover from the vampire. In the vampire empire, ability manufactures or purchases mithril weapons, usually those old vampires. They have money and power in the empire, but at the same time they hinder the newcomers' superiority. This is the real contradiction between pure-blood vampires and mixed-blood vampires that is really difficult to reconcile. As for this group of young vampires, it was obvious that ability had not obtained the mithril weapon. Although they took out the Colt M1911 pistol they carried with them and started shooting at the bodyguards didn't even have the idea of dodge. Run, we must leave here first. Lanka is crazy. Robert's companion began to prepare to escape. It has to be said that young people are sometimes so stupid, often self-righteous to challenge the patience of those in power, and never measure the huge power gap between the 2 sides. This kind of courage is not worthy of admiration, because it is not so much courage as stupidity. Dickon Firth is indeed a huge force within the vampire empire, making many veteran pure-blood vampires afraid of him, and even afraid of him. However, this does not mean that they will be afraid and jealous of the people under Dickon. A pig was blown into the sky by the strong wind, but it does not mean that the pig can fly. Robert and his associates paid the price for their ignorance and stupidity, and I hope they can learn their lesson in the future. No, they should have no future. Suddenly, in the intense and fierce gunfire, Robart's group of vampires, who did not know the height of the sky, all turned into a cloud of fly ash in the air, floating between the sky and the earth, disappearing without a trace. It seems that there is no imaginary loss of both sides. After watching the show, it is time to do business. Billy flickered and entered the manor directly. The manor house in Lanka is quite large, with an area of nearly 20 acres on the ground, which is almost equal to the file size of 2 standard football fields. In New York, where every inch of land is rich in money, this is definitely the standard for luxury homes. After killing Robert and others, some bodyguards were holding tools to clean up the remaining blood and ashes on the ground. Meow. Rays of golden thunder blasted out from under Billy's feet continuously, toward the solemn envelope. Titicaca. Where Lei Meng passed, all vampires, without exception, all exploded and died, with blood, minced meat, and bone scum splashing everywhere. In an instant, dozens of vampires outside the manor were cleared by Billy. Death is so simple. Billy walked into the villa with some accident. The villa was very empty and there were no vampires to kill and play. However, Billy knew that those vampires were hidden, and he could hear each other's roar, absorption and heartbeat. No matter how weak the voice is, no matter how deep the other party hides, he can hear it clearly. You know, Billy's strength has now very close to the gods. What Billy has to do now is to bloodbath this vampire manor. I hope everyone will support it and subscribe more.